we go. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to one of our at-home table reads. Tonight, we're going to be taking over one of the underappreciated Stephen King classics with Creepshow, originally directed by George A. Romero. You know what? We're just going to jump right in and start having some fun. I'm going to be taking over action description tonight as Richard, along with a few other characters. We got Rudy. Where's he at? For her, there he is down there. As, well, let's see, I'm going to pick the big one out of there. Let's go with Aunt Sylvia and Mrs. Castonmeyer. We got Angi. Perfect. As Cass and Wilma, we've got Jess. Awesome. As Nate and Henry, we've got Matt. Fantastic. As Jordy, along with Pratt, we've got Erik.
Yo.
What is he saying right there? As Dex, along with Bedelia and a few others, we've got Nicole.
Yo.
As Harry Wentworth, along with, well, George, we have George. No one worked out. And as Richard Vickers, along with Hank, we've got Scott. All right, well, we're just going to jump right in. This is Creepshow. Creepshow, a screenplay by Stephen King. Fade in. Exterior suburban street, night. A thunderstorm is brewing. We hear the sound of rumbling thunder and lightning, not in strokes, but sort of diffuse and yet unfocused, flashes. The lightning shows us a typical suburban street, as they say, only this one is almost too perfect. Ranch houses, little landscaped plots of lawn, cars parked at the curbs, a toy or two on the big wheels variety left out. The one thing we will notice here is the trash cans have all been put up and down the block. In the foreground, we see a street sign. This is Maple Street, and tomorrow on Maple Street, the city dumpsters will roll. Tonight, however, a thunderstorm is brewing. Sound, a thunder crack of lightning. Title card, Centralville, USA. The camera begins to move down Maple Street, passing houses. The sound of wind is rising. In between this sound and that of thunder, we begin to hear a voice, raised and angry, lecturing. We can't make it out, or we can't make out every word. It isn't necessary that we should.
This crap. I never saw such rotten crap in my life. Where do you get this shit? Who sells it to you? Talking to you, young man. You want to answer me when I talk to you? You know who put the freaking bread on the table around here, don't you?
The camera has stopped on one of the ranch houses about halfway down Maple Street. Now it begins to move up the wall. A door opens for the camera just as it begins to rain. Lightning again, this time a stroke, followed by a loud crash of thunder. The camera is in the hallway now, and the voices are clearer.
Stan, don't be too hard on him. All the kids read them.
My boy isn't all the kids. You want to know where this is going, Billy? In the garbage. Right. Into the freaking garbage. Now, you got any smart mouth about that?
Silence. The camera begins to mount the stairs.
Well, speak up.
I don't see how it's any worse than the books you keep in the top drawer of your bureau, the ones under your underwear, those sex books.
The sound of a slap. Billy begins to cry.
Stan, you didn't have to.
Hit him. Now I find out he's not only reading this crap, he's a goddamn little snoop as well.
No, it wasn't like that. You sent me after your cufflinks. It was on Sunday. You said for me to get your cufflinks, and I looked there because I thought, and I saw...
A loud crack as thunder obliterates the rest. The camera has reached the upper hall and proceeds down it. Okay, away from the voices. It stops at the front of the door, which also opens. The magic of movies before it. The camera goes in. It's dark, empty, a bedroom. Lightning flares, lighting the window a ghastly purple. Something is staring in at us, something horrible and rotten and grinning, with hair that is flowing away in patches. It beckons us, and the camera moves forward.
I thought I heard the front door open. I'll go down and close it. The rain will come in.
I'll do it. I've got some garbage to throw away.
Daddy, please, I'm sorry.
And if I ever see you with a worthless piece of shit like this again, you won't sit down for a week, buddy boy.
Another stroke of lightning. The thing at the window might be a very old witch, might be a rotting corpse. It looks at us with a kind of lunatic glee and points at the street. The camera moves up to the window. When the lightning flashes again, the vision, apparition, whatever it is gone. We only see Maple Street from the second-story vague vantage point. It's now windswept and rather wild-looking. Perhaps one of those big wheels ridden away in the windstorm skitters slowly past along the sidewalk. The garbage cans, which belong to the members of this household, stand as if spotlighted near an overhead arch sodium streetlight. Downstairs, the sound of a front door slamming. A moment later, we see Stan, back to, approaching the garbage cans with something in his hand. The wind ripples his clothes madly. Interior, the door at the head of the stairs, closed, night. We see the light under the door. From within, the sound of Billy sobbing. From downstairs, the front door opens briefly, letting the sound of the storm. It then closes.
That takes care of that.
Stan, don't you think you were, well, a little hard on him?
Did you see that crap? That horror crap? Things coming out of crates and eating people and crawling hands and dead people coming back to life?
Yes.
You want him reading that?
Well, no.
All right. Then hey, I took care of it. That's why God made fathers, babe. That's why God made fathers.
We now hear the sound of Stan opening his newspaper. The rattling paper is somehow complacent and self-satisfied. From behind the closed door, the sniffling has stopped.
I hope you rot in hell.
Sound of a loud thunderclap. Exterior Maple Street night. The camera descends the steps as it goes back down the walk towards the street. Sounds of a storm are very loud now. Howling wind, thunder almost continuous. The camera approaches the garbage cans and peers into one. On the top of the other crap is the colorful comic book magazine. Its title, Creepshow, is lettered in a spooky logo, letters dripping and running in bright green. Slammed across the bottom are the words, First Issue Collector's Edition. The picture shows a man in a priest's outfit kneeling in a coffin, stake in one hand, mallet in the other. A vampire, its skin a grisly white, is half out of the coffin. It's grinning. Its hands are about the throat of the terrified priest who is about to drop its stake. The priest's expression is a gruesome and almost medieval evocation of horror. Sound of thunder, lightning flickers, lighting the cover in faintly blue. Sound, the wind rising. It blows the corner back to the first page of the magazine. The inner front cover shows an excited cartoon kid who's selling a newspaper, which might be Grit. Maybe it's greeting cards or Cloverteen brand salve. The facing page is a splash page of the first story. It shows us our people having English tea with sitting in a room of what is obviously a gracefully appointed house. In the background, a window looks out on a small, ill-tended family graveyard, tombstones leaning this way and that, overgrown by grass and weeds. A cross shows here and there, and the following facade fades on the crib. Story title is Father's Day. Note, there may be a few main credits in the box at the bottom of the splash page, or maybe they're all saved for the end. If they're boxed, we advise keeping them in a comic book mode, as in artwork. Romero, Scrap will figure this out. This isn't produced yet, so, we'll have some fun. The camera moves in on the splash page, and the lettering, all of it, disappears. For a moment, the splash page is just there, and then it becomes a freeze frame. It begins to move. Interior, parlor of the Grantham house, late day. There are 4 people in the room, 2 men and 2 women. One of the women, Sylvia Grantham, is in her late 40s with silvery hair. Both men, Richard Grantham and Hank Blaine, are in their 20s, dressed in sports clothes. The other woman, Cass Blaine, is in her early 20s, a dark-haired knockout, the sort of woman any man would be happy to crawl along behind with his tongue sweeping the pavement. She's wearing jeans, probably Calvin Klein, and a silky white shirt, open to below the cleavage. The cleavage is mighty tasty looking, friends and neighbors. Sylvia has a cup of tea halfway to her lips. Cass is buttering a biscuit, or a scone, or some damn thing. Both she and Hank, her husband, are looking towards Richard. Richard, in turn, appears to be speaking to Sylvia. As the freeze frame begins to move, Sylvia's teacup goes to her mouth, and Cass finishes buttering and begins to eat. Daintily, but still rather greedily.
You really think she'll be out, Aunt Sylvia?
Oh, you could get your watch set by her. 4 o'clock on the dot.
Hank glances over to the clock in the wall. It reads 3:40.
Will she?
You know she will. Pass those scones, Cass. You're such a hog. You married a hog, Henry. You know that, don't you? Cass has healthy appetites.
Hank, Aunt Sylvia. He likes Hank.
Who will be out, Cass?
You mean Cass hasn't told you about Dottie, old great Aunt Bedelia, the patriarch of the clan?
Isn't she the one who was supposed to have, well...
Sylvia is buttering scones with great abandon, eating rapidly, laying waste to the table in general.
Supposed to have killed her father, yes. Supposed to have bopped the old pop with a glass ashtray. He was the real patriarch of us all, Richard. Made all the money, didn't he? Doesn't that qualify him for patriarch status? Of course it does.
Hank looks rather nonplussed at this. Cass giggles, and her brother Richard looks almost amused. Sylvia merely continues with her grand dame imitation. She speaks to Hank.
Bedelia is my Aunt Henry, which means she's older than God, but her father, Nathan Grantham, was even older than that. Old Poop simply would not die. She was acquitted, you know, if that makes any difference to you.
Richard laughs. Hank looks embarrassed. Cass pouts.
It's Hank, Aunt Sylvia. Can't you remember that?
Aunt Sylvia smiles with bright malice.
Of course, every family should have at least one skeleton in its closet and one black sheep in its pasture. Don't you agree, Henry?
Hank hems and haws. Anything he says will be the wrong thing. Sylvia smiles at him with a happy, nasty snort of malice. Richard rescues him.
However it happened, Hank, the old man deserved to die. He wasn't a poop or an old rip or 95 years young or any of those things. He was a monster, and he got rich on bootleg and smuggling and extortion and murder for hire way back in 1910, if you believe the stories. If she killed him, I say more to her.
Bravo.
Exterior, a tarred country road, day. A big Lincoln sweeps past us, going fast. Interior, the Lincoln with Aunt Bedelia, day. Here we have an old woman who is perhaps a once noble looking, but is now just seems ravaged. Perhaps she is Aunt Sylvia's peer in age, but she looks 20 years older. Her face is haunted, dazed. As she drives, she leans over and opens the glove compartment. The Lincoln swerves dangerously, and she takes a bottle of Jim Beam out. She swigs straight from the neck of the bottle, then returns it, the car swerving again.
He simply would not die, Henry. It was as if he had made a pact with the devil or something. And the abuse Bedelia took, well...
According to the story, he was hysterically jealous of her all his life. The complete Freudian relationship. Then, when he was 90-something, he had a stroke, and she got to nurse him full-time, and she met a man, a real September courtship.
Up ahead, the house is pulled into view, a real Victorian monstrosity of a place. Exterior, the little graveyard behind the house, day. As the voice continues, the camera moves in on the grave of Nathan Grantham. His dates are obscured by tall grass. The headstone is a good-sized granite job.
September courtship? Oh my God, that was October or November at the very least. Made the night before Christmas. He was 75 if he was a day, and great Aunt Bedelia is...
Never mind, dears. The point is, Henry, she loved the man, and Nathan had him killed.
Interior, the parlor, day. The tea things have mostly been eaten now, mostly by Cass and Aunt Sylvia. Hank, at last, looks shocked. He sets his teacup down with a clatter. Cass and her brother Richard look amused. Aunt Sylvia rather indulgent. This is old family history to them.
Well, that's the story they tell around here anyway, Hank. The old guy, Garbro, his name was supposedly died in a hunting accident. That's what's on the books anyway.
For Bedelia, it was the last straw. She bashed her father with a glass ashtray.
So rumor has it.
And either way, it was good riddance to bad rubbish, and my lovely niece and handsome nephew had their own reasons to be pleased, no matter if dear old Nathan fell or was struck, didn't you, dears?
Cass looks mildly and sulkily to put out at this. Richard, merely bored. Perhaps he buffs his fingernails on the leg of his pants as Aunt Sylvia goes about her pleasant, rather spiteful way.
You see, Henry, whatever his methods may have been, Nathan was only Grantham in recent times to have made any kind of touch for making money. The talents of we lesser Granthams lay more in the other direction. We are very good at spending it. Lovely Cass enjoys buying her clothes at Bloomie's and accessories at Saks. Richard has a Mercedes and a passion for the horses. And Nathan would not indulge either of them. Naughty of him, wasn't it, Henry? But Aunt Bedelia solved all the problems. There was no trouble about the will, share and share alike. Lawyers have such an annoying habit of skimming off the cream, don't they? And every Father's Day, Aunt Bedelia comes up here and meditates by his grave for nearly an hour, and then she comes in and has dinner with her grateful kinfolk.
While you're at it, Aunt Sylvia, why don't you tell Hank about your summer house in Bermuda and your place in Rome, your lifetime Euro pass, your...
Aunt Sylvia holds up a hand and speaks regally.
Cassandra, darling, how can such a beautiful woman be such an utter turd?
Exterior, the Lincoln, day. The car is now leaving the tarred road and moving up a long dirt driveway towards the house. It weaves unsteadily back and forth. Dust spumes behind it. Interior, the parlor, day. Hank is the only one who looks discomforted by Aunt Sylvia's last remark. Richard is still bored, Cass mildly disgusted. We get the feeling that these two women sharpen their claws on each other on a regular basis.
Why Father's Day?
Because she feels guilty.
Oh, Aunt Sylvia.
But it's true. For more than 30 years, she allowed herself to become devoted to him. I suppose you could even say she worshipped his foul presence. And then, on Father's Day, just 7 years ago, and every Father's Day since.
Do you think she really did it, Mrs. Grantham?
Aunt Sylvia looks at him, then at Cass. Cass glances at Richard.
Oh yes, I think she killed him. But her guilt is a real thing, and I believe it may eventually kill her. Despite what Cass may think, patricide is a terrible crime, no matter how evil the patter may have been. But, Henry, Cass knows remarkable little about guilt of any kind.
Hell of a...
Sound of a clock striking 4 cuts her off. They all look around towards the window. As the last stroke of the clock dies off, we hear the sound of the Lincoln motor.
Is that?
Oh, yes. You could set your watch by her, Henry. She'll meditate, and then the 4 of us will sit down to a nice baked ham dinner with her. The 4 of us who owe her so much. Correct, children?
Sylvia looks around at them. No one says anything. And the camera looks out at the parlor window to where the Lincoln has stopped. The twin cemetery pillars and the driver's side door is opening. Exterior, Aunt Bedelia, day. In the bright light, she looks more ravaged than ever, if that's possible. She has a spray of flowers in one hand, her bottle of beam in the other. Her eyes are red and raw-looking. The camera follows as she enters the Grantham family cemetery. The place is a mess. The grass is high and rank, the leaning gravestones ill-tended. We hear the reedy sound of crickets. Aunt Sylvia walks in with the automatic blank determination of the damned. The camera moves in on Aunt Bedelia's face, and as it does, we hear an echoey knocking sound. It's wood on wood, but it's far away, either in distance or in time. Gradually, as the camera continues to move in, the sound grows louder. Interior, a room, dusk. What must surely be one of the world's oldest and most evil-looking men is wrapping the papered wall of a room we may recognize as the parlor with his cane. He is sitting in an old-fashioned wickerback wheelchair. The wrapping on the wall is steady, impeccable, maddening. As he speaks, his voice has the same echoey quality.
I want my cake, Bedelia. Where's my cake? It's Father's Day. I want my cake.
The old man is babyish and senile, but there's still something terrible about him. Exterior, the family cemetery with Aunt Bedelia, day. Walking, weeping, perhaps sluggish from the bottle of beam. In the background, the sound of the knocking cane grows ever louder, overwhelming the sound of the crickets now, overwhelming everything, pounding into our ears. Interior, the kitchen with Aunt Bedelia, dusk. She should look 7 years younger here. She's just finishing decorating a frosted cake. She glances towards the sound of the knocking cane, harried, distracted, shaky, and then back down to her work. She does one final curlique and then puts a decorating tube aside. The top of the cake reads, Happy Father's Day, inside a mass of curliques and flowers.
Bedelia, I want my cake.
She claps her hands onto her ears, and the sounds of the knocking, if anything, increases the volume. She opens her mouth, and she might be screaming, but over the knocking sound of Nate's cane, which now sounds like artillery fire, we hear nothing. Interior, the parlor wall, close up, dusk. As the cane comes down, perhaps in slow motion, and connects with one wall, this time the sound is like a rifle report. Exterior, a field somewhere in the country, dawn. An elderly but rather handsome man, Yarborough, is walking steadily along tall grass. He's wearing a red checked hunting jacket and a fluorescent orange cap. The shotgun lies over his arm. His eyes are searching steadily and carefully for some sort of game. We hear a clicking sound. Yarborough looks towards it. A sound of rifle shot. Yarborough's lower face disappears with a splash of blood and bone. He is thrown backwards into the meadow, his own gun discharging as he lands. We hear the sound of feet approaching. A moment later, boots and the barrel of a rifle come into frame. Then they move away. Throughout, the same echoey sound of the cane knocking on the wall. It has now become very loud again. Interior of the kitchen, dusk. Aunt Bedelia is doing a number on the cake. She has seized the red decorator tube of frosting and is seizing it all over the top of the cake in random patterns. The sound of knocking is thunder. The exterior of the family cemetery with Aunt Bedelia. She's walking towards Nate's grave. Back in the hallway, here Bedelia looks 7 years younger again. The hallway is a cold tile throat lit by fluorescence. She is flanked by men in white coats, her face dazed. The camera follows through a door with frosted glass panel. In the room beyond it, a sheeted body lies on a slab. Camera moves in on the body. A hand reaches out and whisks the sheet back. It's Yarborough. His face is gone and a mass of coagulated blood from the mouth down, and the rest of him is livid with death.
Can you identify this man as Peter Richard Yarborough, your fiance?
Aunt Bedelia screams. She screams and screams until the sound is covered by the knocking sound. Interior of the kitchen. The kitchen is empty. The defaced cake sits still on the counter near the stove. The red frosting that has been squirted all over the top looks like blood. The knocking sound goes on and on. Interior of the parlor with Nate. He sits in his wheelchair, knocking single-mindedly against the wall with his cane. His face is petulant and cruel.
You want my cake, Bedelia? Where's my cake? It's Father's Day and I want it. You're all a bunch of worthless, no-good sponging off me. Where's my Father's Day cake? I want it. I want.
Now we hear a screaming sound. It gets louder and louder. Nate stops pounding with his cane and tries to turn around so he can see. Aunt Bedelia comes bursting out of the shadowy hallway leading back to the kitchen. She is totally mad. A harpy. Her hands are near her face, clawing at the air. As she passes an end table, she grabs a glass ashtray, probably without even seeing or knowing what it is she has. As she reaches Nate's wheelchair, she swings it high over her head. Nate, at the last, realizes that he is about to get a one-time only Father's Day present, and his face registers shock and fear. Ineffectually, he puts his hands up.
Bedelia, no, no, no.
She brings the ashtray down hard, cleaving the rotten old bastard's skull. Blood everywhere. He topples out of his wheelchair onto the floor. His can lands beside him. His eyes are wide and dead. Aunt Bedelia stands over him, dazed. Then she begins to smile, then to giggle, then to laugh. She stands over her dead father, the bloody ashtray in one hand, screaming with laughter.
Happy Father's Day, Daddy. We'll have the cake later, okay? Okay. You shouldn't have killed Peter. But happy Father's Day anyway. Happy?
But she can't continue. Her laughter as all that shadowed room is like a scream to the damned, and the camera moves down to the dead and staring face of Nate Grantham in his pool of blood. Back at the Grantham family graveyard, she's breached Nate's grave. The stone is a little bigger, a little newer, and the grass is a little shorter. She kneels down, staggering a little, and puts the flowers by the headstone. She puts the bottle of beam in the grass beside her, and when she speaks, her voice is old, hesitant, and roughened by booze.
Daddy, I'm so sorry. I know it was wrong and bad, but Daddy, you should have let me have Peter. You didn't have to kill him. I would have taken care of you. You just never wanted to share, did you? I'm sorry, just the same. I just got so mad, you know. It was the sound of your cane. I think it got in my head and I couldn't think and
She falls silent for a moment, just staring at the headstone. Then a look of mild surprise crosses her face.
Please let me go because the ashtray was where it was supposed to be and your body was over by the end table. Daddy, your wheelchair was overturned and there were no fingerprints on the ashtray. They let me go. I suppose it was Sylvia, wasn't it? Yeah, of course it was. Sylvia kept me out of jail. I wonder why I can't thank her.
She fumbles for the bottle of beam, knocks it over, picks it up, and has a drink. She puts it aside, and it falls over again. The remainder of the bourbon gurgles out unnoticed onto the grass.
Anyway, Daddy, I miss you, and I guess I'm the only one who does, so happy Father's Day, Daddy. Happy
Suddenly, and with no warning at all, Nate Grantham sits up in his grave. There is a ripping sound of small roots giving way, and the ground rises up in an almost unified whole. The effect would be something like a man sitting up suddenly in bed and throwing off a quilt. The corpse is a rotted horror, bones showing through there and there. The clothes are tattered and grimy with earth. One eye is only a socket. A few wisps of hair cling to the thing's skull. A ring on one finger has turned green. Nate reaches for Bedelia with Strangler's hand. She screams, tries to back away, and falls over.
Here's my cake, Bedelia. It's Father's Day and I want my cake. I want it. It's mine. Where's my Father's Day cake?
Aunt Bedelia is screaming constantly. Her eyes bulge in terror. She has at this point probably gone totally insane. I know I would be if it happened to me. She tries to crawl away, and Nate comes after her, pulling himself out of his shattered grave. We can only see a gaping, dirty wound on the top of his head where he was struck with the ashtray. Bedelia crawls into the grass, screaming. The corpse lurches after her, and one claw-like hand snares her ankle. The thing jerks towards her again, then its skeletal fingers close around her neck. The corpse's face, extreme close-up. It's grinning, vindictive, horrible.
I want my cake, you bitch, and I'm gonna have it.
The parlor, close upon the clock. It reads 5 o'clock, and the sound of the chimes are almost inaudible, buried under the flood of loud disco music.
Cass, turn that down right now!
After a moment, the music is turned down, and the camera draws back to take in the rest of the room. Cass and Hank come in from the living room, flushed from dancing. Cass looks extremely sexy. Richard sits on the table, which has now been laid out for dinner with a glass of wine. Aunt Sylvia comes in, followed by the housekeeper, Mrs. Danvers.
Shall I glaze the ham now, ma'am?
You better wait another 5 minutes, Mrs. Danvers. She's late. I can't understand it, but I suppose we all get older.
Yes, ma'am.
She leaves. Aunt Sylvia goes to the window and looks out at the cemetery. The Lincoln is still parked by the pillars, but there's no sign of life anywhere.
I hope she's all right. Perhaps she's fallen asleep. Richard, you'd better go out and check.
I don't want to go out there. Place gives me the creeps.
Fine, Aunt Sylvia. Probably just got mooning about the good old days and let the time get away from her. Wine, Hank?
No, thanks. I'll go out and have a look for her if you want, Mrs. Grantham.
Would you, Henry?
Ugh, Hank, don't be such a bore. Get me a drink.
I won't be long.
He leaves the room by way of the kitchen. Aunt Sylvia fixes Cass with a triumphant glance. Cass leaves the room with something of a huff. In a few moments, the sound of disco music begins again, even louder.
Don't you two ever get tired of it, Aunt Sylvia?
Aunt Sylvia is looking after Hank.
Such a sweet boy. How will Cass ever stand it, dear Richard?
Yeah, she'll be in Reno by Labor Day.
The Grantham family cemetery, day, edging into dusk. Hank approaches with the Lincoln, looks inside, sees it's empty, and goes into the cemetery. He looks around, a bit uneasy, before walking forward. The place is a bit spooky now. When he does start walking deeper in, his advance is rather tentative.
Aunt Bedelia? Miss Grantham? You around?
There's no sound. Faintly from the house behind him, there comes the sound of Cass's disco music. Hank starts to walk forward again, looking around for Nate's grave. This should be spun out a bit. Hank is looking for the grave. The audience is undoubtedly waiting for Nate's rotted corpse to spring out of the high grass or from behind a tombstone at Hank. The director will know what to do with the situation. After an appropriate length of time and no attack, Hank finds Nate's grave, the plot in front of the headstone torn up, apparently empty. He stares at this, eyes widening, then turns away. He's not exactly running, but he's freaked out, moving fast. He stumbles over something, Aunt Bedelia's purse, perhaps, and sprawls full length. Hank lands almost nose to nose with Aunt Bedelia's corpse. Her eyes are wide, her face purple, strangled. Hank utters a cry of horror and scrambles to his feet, directly into the arms of Nate's corpse. It shakes Hank, the way some monstrously strong terrier would shake a rat, and then throws him. Hank lands against a tombstone, and we hear the cracking sound of his skull shattering. His eyes are open. His expression is one of surprise. He might be sitting on a bench somewhere, admitting for a bus. Exterior, the family graveyard. It is silhouetted against the setting sun like some sort of grotesque scarecrow.
It's my cake.
Abruptly, it turns and begins to shamble towards the house. In the parlor, Richard is having another glass of wine. Across from him, Aunt Sylvia, also with wine. Hers is untouched. She is tapping impatiently against her glass with the handle of a spoon, the sound of disco from the other room. Aunt Sylvia glances at the clock. Now it's nearly 5:25. Abruptly, the music shuts off and Cass comes in, put out.
Where is he?
My darling, I couldn't say. I would guess he's hobnobbing with Aunt Bedelia, getting her side of the story, perhaps.
I want him, and I want my dinner. I'm hungry.
Well, go get him then.
I don't like it out there. It's creepy, and she's creepy too.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
You go, Richard.
He's your husband. I don't even like him. I think he's a hick.
Richard!
Well, I do. He's a fucking hick.
Richard, you know I don't approve of such language in my house.
Sylvia rises.
I'll go. Such a sweet boy.
Sylvia sweeps regally from the room, leaving Cass and Richard to glare at each other. In the kitchen, the room is creepily similar to the way we saw it in the flashback sequence. Sylvia enters, speaking.
Mrs. Danvers, have you seen...
She stops. Mrs. Danvers is not in evidence. The kitchen is deserted.
Mrs. Danvers?
No answer. Aunt Sylvia looks around doubtedly. She crosses to the pantry and opens the door. This turns into a shriek as Mrs. Danvers' body falls out of the pantry. Her hands seem to grab bonelessly at Aunt Sylvia. Screaming, Aunt Sylvia flees across the kitchen to the back door. She opens it, and there's Nate, standing there in all his rotting glory. His hands pissing out and grab Aunt Sylvia by the neck.
It's my cake. I want my cake. It's Father's Day, and I want my cake.
Sylvia utters a choked gargling noise, and the Nate creature suddenly twists her head all the way around so that Sylvia's frozen face and bulging eyes are staring directly into the camera. This is accompanied by the sound of grinding, snapping bones. We only see it for a flash of this before cutting to the clock in the parlor. Close up. The clock is now 5:45. The camera pulls back until we see the whole parlor. Cass is pacing back and forth angrily. Richard is now drinking wine straight from the bottle and gives us the impression of having passed through the country of the merely tiddly to that of the outerly drunk. Cass glances up at the clock and then explodes.
Where is she? And where the hell is Hank?
Maybe he and Aunt Sylvia decided to go behind the old family crypt for a quickie.
You're not funny.
Who's joking?
Cass pauses momentarily. We can see by her face that she wouldn't quite put this past Aunt Sylvia. Then she resumes her pacing.
Where's Aunt Bedelia?
Why don't you go out there and see? They may still need a fourth for bridge.
Go see. Please, Richard, please.
You go find him. He's your hick. Husband, I mean.
I hate you!
At the pantry, we see a rotting hand reaching up to the high shelf and bringing down several items. They're cake decorating tubes. Cass is at the window, looking at Aunt Bedelia's Lincoln. Richard is at the table, finishing off the bottle of wine. He holds it upended over his mouth, catching the last 2 or 3 drops. Then he belches. At the same moment, the parlor clock chimes 6. Cass turns from the window and approaches Richard. The bravado and pique is gone.
Richard, I'm scared. It's almost dark out there.
Nothing to me. I'm gonna go get another bottle of wine.
Please, Richard!
He gets up and starts towards the kitchen door. Cass goes with him. They get about halfway across the room when the swinging door between the parlor and the kitchen swings slowly inward. Shambling out from the dark is Nate's corpse. We see it only from the waist up in this shot, which should show all 3 of the players, Nate, Cass, and Richard. Cass utters a piercing shriek and falls back against Richard, who stands frozen. Incredibly, Nate is grinning.
It's Father's Day, and I got my cake. I got my own cake.
Nate raises his hand into the camera's frame. In it is Aunt Sylvia's head ripped off of her severed body. The eyes stare blindly at Cass and Richard. The head has been decorated with loops and swirls and circles of frosting.
Happy Father's Day.
Freeze frame. This freeze frame becomes a comic book picture taking up about half the page. In the panels directly above it, we can see 2 other panels in sequence, Cass and Richard arguing in the parlor, and Nate's rotten hand grasping the cake decorating tubes. In the major panel, balloons are coming out from the characters' mouths. Nate saying, "Happy Father's Day, I got my own cake, Happy Father's Day." Richard saying, "Oh my Lord," and Cass is saying, "Yeah!" In the background, we hear the sound of thunder and rain. Lightning flickers blue on the page. The wind gusts flutters the page, and then it flips over. This new page is comprised entirely of ads. On the left is a full-page ad for Dawn of the Dead. On the right is a whole range of novelty gadgets like joy buzzers, snakes that pop out of fake peanut cans, X-ray tubes which you can supposedly look through girls' dresses, throw your voice gadgets, books on hypnosis, dozens of others. We won't be able to read all of them, but you get the idea. This is a page of ads that will amuse and amaze your friends. A skeletal, bony hand reaches into the frame, and it almost flickers blue in the lightning. Beyond the bony wrist, we see a ragged edge of some sort of robe. Perhaps we get the idea that this is the hand of a creature glimpsed through the window in the first scene. The hand turns the page to the sound of a loud crack of thunder. And the new left-hand corner of the page is a so-called house ad defending horror comics. It's headed with a glaring black print. Which would you prefer for your child? Below the head are 3 comic book pictures side by side. On the extreme left are a number of 12 to 15-year-olds shooting dope in a scuzzy basement. In the extreme right is a kid backed up against an alley wall with being menaced by a teenage gang with switchblades. The center picture shows a happy, content child sitting at home in his well-lighted living room, a bowl of munchies near at hand. He is reading an issue of Creepshow. In the background, a decidedly 1950-ish mom and dad are staring at their son approvingly. There's a lot of other copies with this house ad we won't have time to read, and we won't be interested anyway. But remember, Mom and Dad, Laurel Comic was a moral comic. A lot of fun stuff in here. With the page facing to the right, and after a moment, the camera will move on this to the splash page to story number 2. There'll be, in this picture, we will see a farmer in overalls standing on a low ridge of land and looking across his field at night. There's a moon with the sky splashed with stars. There is something standing up there, a bright light sketched itself halfway through the night sky. And it is this that the farmer is looking at with a kind of innocent wonder. The title of this story is The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill. As with the first story, the sounds of the thunder and lightning fade, and the camera slowly moves into a close-up. The title material fades out. For a moment, the comic drawing fills the frame. Then it becomes a freeze frame. Then it begins to move. The light in the sky arcs and strikes the earth just on Jordy Verrill's side of the little stream. He follows it with his eyes, and for a moment, there's an even brighter flare of light, and then a thudding sound.
Holy oh Jesus!
He starts to run towards the point of impact. Exterior near the point of impact. In the background, the Bluebird Creek, a small stream small enough for an agile man to leap over, burbles along. In the immediate foreground, there's a small smoking crater in the field, which is probably a hayfield that's been recently cut. Overhead, the stars in their billions, bright and mysterious. Jordy comes running up to the crater, panting and out of breath, ogling with excitement. Jordy is about 45 years old, and he's not a very bright man. He stares into the crater with wide eyes.
Holy oh Jesus!
He gets down on his knees to get a better look. The camera moves in so we can get a better look too. The crater, Jordy's POV. There's a smoking object in the crater, a little bigger than a softball. We may be struck by its regular spherical appearance, although it is certainly not a metal object. Tendrils of smoke are rising from it. At the crater with Jordy.
That's a meteor! I'll be dipped in shit if that ain't a meteor! Holy Jesus!
Jordy reaches into his overall pockets, fumbles around in there, and brings out a folding rule. He unfolds perhaps 3 feet of it and prods the spherical object in the crater with it. Nothing happens. He folds the ruler up and repockets it. He leans forward, stretches out his hand. Closer, closer. He touches it.
Ow, shit!
He jerks his hand back and sticks his fingers in his mouth. When he removes them and looks, a number of blisters have already formed on them. Then his gaze is pulled back to the meteor, if that's what it is, and he regards it long and thoughtfully.
Wonder what they'd pay for it up to the college.
The camera moves in on Jordy's daydreaming face. A large college office day. The legend on the door reads, Department of Meteors. Jordy is sitting with ease on one side of the desk, wearing his store-bought suit. On the other side of the desk is Jordy's conception of what a college professor should look like. White coat, monocle for an eye, Lennon haircut, hawk-like face. On the desk between them, in a bucket, is the meteor.
I found it in my field just this side of the Bluebird Creek. It's a meteor just as sure as shit sticks to a blanket. You can't fool Jordy Verrill. At first, I thought it might be a piece of one of those Earth satellites like that Skylab, Skynet. So tell me, Doc, how much will you pay?
Well, it's a damn fine one, Mr. Verrill. I see I can't fool you about that. You're pretty sharp. How does, $50 sound?
I won't take a cent less than $200. So put it in your pipe and smoke it.
The meteorologist promptly takes out a pipe and begins to puff it with tobacco.
Shall we say 75?
Not a cent less than 200. That's my meteor, and if you want it, you'll have to pay my price, Doc. Anita Verrill didn't raise no idiots. 200.
At the crater with Jordy. He's staring at the meteor, and he might as well have dollar signs in his eyes.
Not a cent less than 200. Pay off that goddamn bank loan. That's my ticket, my meteor, my price. They're fucking A-right.
Jordy gets to his feet, walking around to the other side of the crater, and then walks back again.
Gotta cool this son of a bitch off. That's the ticket.
Jordy sets off running back the way he came. Exterior Jordy's front yard, night. Jordy is filling a pail, same that we saw at the beginning of the scene, as a matter of fact. At the faucet bib at the side of his home place, there's a rambling farmhouse that has seen better days, like around 1940 maybe. The yard is full of disemboweled cars and auto parts. Plastic on the windows, a mighty fine crop of weeds growing. From a tree by the road, a sign hangs down, inexpertly painted, car repairing, motorcycle repairing. Cukes, corn, fresh raspberries, free kittens. When the bucket is filling, Jordy looks curiously at his fingers again. Looking at Jordy's fingers, blisters all over the first, second, and third fingers. He stops looking at his fingers, twists off the faucet, grabs the bucket, and starts running back towards the field with it, the bucket sloshing water. He's grinning happily. Interior, a bank loan officer's office day. The loan officer looks as mean as the devil himself. Jordy stands opposite him in his store-bought suit, looking composed.
I'm sorry, Mr. Verrill. We simply can't carry your paper any longer. I'm afraid we'll have to.
Oh, you won't have to.
I beg your pardon?
I said you won't have to.
From his pocket, he takes out a wad of bills thick enough to choke a horse and counts out $200. The loan officer looks flabbergasted and rather chagrined. All of this is Jordy's conception, remember?
Would you mind telling me, Mr. Verrill, where you came by this money?
You might say it fell out of the sky.
Exterior Jordy's field. Jordy, still grinning, reaches the crater at his bucket. There is a meteor still smoking. Jordy stands there, panting for a moment, and then tosses the whole bucket of water over the meteor. There's a loud hissing sound, followed by a snapping sound that's almost like the creak of a breaking branch. Steam obscures the crater. Jordy waits for it to clear, now looking anxious. When the steam does clear, the look of anxiety becomes one of disgusted horror. The meteor has broken in two pieces. There is a hollow center, we see, and from it a gray liquid is seeping. It looks like liquefied cigarette smoke, or perhaps semen.
Oh, you've done it, Jordy Verrill! You lunkhead!
He slaps his forehead. Interior large college office. This is a replay of the previous flashback, except Jordy now looks abject. He's almost cowering in his chair inside his store-bought suit. The meteorologist definitely has the upper hand. In the bucket are two pieces of a meteor.
$200 for a broken meteor? Mr. Verrill, you must be joking. I wouldn't give you 2 cents.
By the crater with Jordy.
Jordy Verrill, you lunkhead! Verrill, luck is always in, and you spell that kind of luck B-A-D. Well, I gotta try.
Jordy takes his bucket and works his way into the crater. He picks up half of the meteor and drops it into the bucket with a clunking sound. He picks up the other half, and some of the gray stuff trickles onto his blistered fingers. Jordy grimaces with disgust, drops the second half of the meteor into the bucket, and wipes his blistered fingers on the leg of his eyeballs.
Oh, meteor shit.
He works his way back to the little crater and looks down into it. The gray stuff is almost gone now. It is seeping into the ground. He looks down into the bucket.
Maybe I can glue it together. In the morning.
He starts off, not running or happy now. He moves slowly, shoulders slumped. As Jordy moves out of frame, the camera moves in on the crater. It's still steaming faintly, and there's something ominous to it. Exterior Jordy's dooryard, night. He puts the bucket down beside his rickety porch, looks at the two broken pieces, and whistles disgustedly between his teeth. He mounts the porch. A cat comes out, attempting to twine itself between his legs. It gets a kick for its pains. Jordy goes inside. Interior Jordy's living room. Frankly speaking, the place is a cluttery mess. Everything is old except for the Sears color TV that holds the place of honor. A few old plates with food crusted on are stacked here and there. We may see ants on them. 3 or 4 cats cruise around. This is obviously not a house that Better Homes and Gardens is going to be interested in during the foreseeable future. Jordy kicks the cat out of his way and turns on the TV. A sitcom comes on. Perhaps it's a big-time wrestling match. Jordy becomes riveted immediately, whatever it is, and during the rest of the scene, he doesn't take his eyes from the TV. He backs towards his chair, the food-stained monstrosity with flounce hanging down from the carpet. Jordy sits down, and still without taking his eyes off the TV, feels under the flounce with one hand. He brings up a bottle of Ripple wine, unscrews the cap, takes a big drink, and drops the bottle against his crotch. Absently, he shakes his hurt fingers a little, then sucks on them for a while, takes another drink of wine, and continues to watch TV, his troubles forgotten. He's engrossed. The cats come hither and yawn. Exterior at the crater. We can barely see the fresh earth thrown up by the meteor's impact. It has grown over with what looks like fresh new grass. The crater comes out of the way, looks about the way your lawn does 10 days after you've seeded it. The grass is thin, but very green and growing nicely. At the bucket on Jordy's porch, the bucket is also full of new grass. It appears to be growing right out of the steel. In Jordy's living room, he's watching intently, bottle of Ripple propped against his crotch, his hands on the arm of the chair. The camera moves in on Jordy's blistered fingers, and we see that the blisters are being covered over by a greenish growth against Jordy's skin. It almost looks fungoid. Interior Jordy's living room. Still watching El Tubo, Jordy grabs his old bottle of Ripple with his hurt hand and goes for a drink. Just before he gets the neck of the bottle to his mouth, he sees the growth on his fingers. Jordy screams, and instead of going for his mouth, the wine pours all over his eyeballs. He drops the bottle and leaps out of his chair, staring at his fingers in horror.
Oh, Jesus Christ, on a jumped-up chariot-driven sidecar.
Jordy crosses the room to the telephone in the corner, which sits on a cluttery end table. As he reaches the phone, he looks at his fingers again, and his eyes widen.
That meteor shit.
He picks up a telephone and begins to dial rapidly and then pauses. Interior doctor's office. Jordy is sitting on the examination table in his pants and a strappy t-shirt. The doctor, who looks every bit as mean as a bear with a weasel biting his ass, is examining the green growth on Jordy's fingers with a magnifying glass. Abruptly, he puts it down, turns, and begins rummaging in a cabinet overhead while Jordy watches his back anxiously.
I'm sorry, Jordy, but those fingers have to come off.
The doctor turns around. He has a large meat cleaver in his hand and he's grinning unpleasantly.
Just lie down, Jordy. This won't take a minute.
Interior Jordy's living room. Jordy slams the phone back into the cradle as if it were hot. He looks around indecisively, wondering what to do next. His hand goes to his mouth and he begins biting his nails. Suddenly, he realizes what he's doing, and that expression of horror returns.
Oh, Jordy, you lunkhead, you've been...
Partial replay of a previous scene. Jordy is shaking his fingers, then absently sucking them, then taking another drink of Ripple. Interior Jordy's living room. Now Jordy's horror is extreme. He rushes to a small room adjoining the living room, the bathroom, and the camera follows. He turns on a buzzy fluorescent light, and the camera looks over his shoulder as Jordy leans toward the toothpaste-spotted mirror and runs out his tongue. His tongue is now furred green with the growing stuff. Jordy utters a sound that is more a scream than moan and staggers back against the jab of the bathroom door. Near where the crater was, we know this is where the crater was because of its proximity to Bluebeard Creek, but the crater itself is now overgrown with a frass-like growth. It is high as hay that's ready to be cut. Perhaps it would come to the top of a man's shin. It has begun to spread noticeably in all directions, towards the creek and back towards the rise where Jordy saw the meteor fall. Exterior Jordy's dooryard. We can see a little of the bucket, but not much. It's almost covered. Meanwhile, the beaten earth around the bucket has now grown green. The faucet bib is festooned with tendrils of the stuff, and it's beginning to grow up the side of the house like ivy. In Jordy's living room, Jordy is walking around and around the living room, scared and agitated. Behind him, the TV plays on, a newscast or something. Every now and then, he holds up his hand and stares at it, unbelieving. The growth now covers all of the fingers.
Oh, itches, gory, don't it itch? Like the poison ivy I got that time I went hunting with Richie Corliss, and I had to go so bad I took a crap right in the middle of the patch of it. That's barrel luck though, always in, always BAD bad.
Automatically, he's going to his mouth again with that hand. He sees the growth and shoves his hand away from his face with a cry of disgust.
That meteor ship. That's what it was.
He goes to the TV and turns it off, and we see that the knobs are covered with the greenish growth. With another low cry, Jordy goes back to his chair. The right arm of the easy chair is likewise now growing.
I gotta call Doc Geeson. I got to.
He goes to the phone, and we see that the dial is also showing signs of growth.
Does it grow on everything? Christ!
Still, he grabs the headset out of its cradle. What else can he do? And rapidly dials 5 numbers. We hear the phone ring twice, and then it's picked up. We hear the phone ring twice, and then it's picked up.
Hello, this is Dr. Richard Geeson. Doc, this is Jordy Verrill out of the Bluebird Creek, and something's awful happened.
The Voice of Dr. Geeson's phone mate goes right through Jordy's lines, and he stops, realizing little by little that he's listening to a machine.
And I'm on vacation for the next 2 weeks, chasing the wily smallmouth bass in western Maine. Dr. Peter V. Higgins of Castle Rock, wink wink, will be taking my calls until September 2nd, and you may reach him at his office from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. at 741-8989. That number again is 741-8989. If you have an emergency, either the Northern Cumberland Memorial Hospital in Bridgeton or the Stevens Memorial Hospital in Norway.
Jordy, who has been listening almost mesmerized, hangs up with a bang. He swallows and we hear a click in his throat.
No hospital, no hospital. Then you go in there. You don't come out no more. That's where they take you to die.
He backs away from the phone, almost as if it might bite him, and then goes hurriedly out of the room. In Jordy's side porch, Jordy comes out of the door, moving rapidly. He gets almost to the porch steps when he sees the signs of the growth. It's growing over the last quarter of the porch and carpets the steps. The whole section of the courtyard is surrounding the bucket is coated with the stuff. Growing knee-high where the bucket was, the lower section of the house and outbuildings where the faucet bib was, likewise coated. Jordy surveys this for a long time, and then he slowly backs away towards the door again.
No, no, no.
He goes inside. In Jordy's kitchen, Jordy is rummaging furiously through his kitchen cupboard, pulling out canned goods, knocking some of them to the floor. He breaks a bottle of cooking oil. We see only his hands and arms in this scene. His right hand is almost covered with the green weed-like growth. Tendrils of it hang down in places, almost like cypress moss, and speckles of it have begun to grow up his other hand as well. He reaches far back into the cupboard and comes out with a bottle of Pop-Off vodka, one of the practicing Alky's best friends. Another well-known one is Thunderbird wine.
There you are, you sucker. No, you was in there someplace.
Jordy crosses from the cabinets to his old and extremely dirty refrigerator. We still only see the hands and part of his body. He opens the refrigerator door and rummages inside with a hand not holding the vodka. Perhaps he knocks over a bottle of milk. Near the back of the top shelf, he pulls out a big Tupperware pitcher of orange juice and pulls it out. Kicks the fridge door shut with one swipe of his knee. He crosses to the counter by the sink, sets the vodka and orange juice on it, and takes a large glass from the dish drainer. The movements are jerky, and he spills some of the orange juice as he makes himself a very heavy screwdriver. He sets the bottle and pitcher aside and raises the glass. In the kitchen with Jordy, he drinks, and we see his lower face is mossed with the green stuff. It is the heaviest on and around his lips, but perhaps it isn't as bad as we feared. Jordy drains the entire drink and closes his eyes for a moment or two. Then he opens them and appears calmer, more in control of himself. What was that, Jordy?
Needed that.
Thanks. He makes himself another stiff one and drains half of it and burps.
Needed that too.
He finds a tray and puts the bottle, a pitcher of juice, and the remainder of a second drink on it. The camera follows as he goes back to the living room and puts the tray at the end table by the chair. The chair is alive with the growth now, and it's almost as heavy on the right arm. Jordy goes to the TV and switches it on. One foot kicks the Ripple bottle, and we see it's full of the stuff. Patches of the carpet are green, the controls of the TV are overhung with the stuff. As the TV sound comes up, Jordy goes back to his chair and stands regarding it for a moment.
Fuck it, it's my chair, and I'm gonna sit in it.
He suits the action to the word, grabs his glass and downs the rest of the screwdriver, and pours himself another. He drinks it, looking at the TV. He has begun to weep. His eyes glisten with his tears, and we see them spilling slowly down his cheeks.
I'm growing.
Exterior, Bluebird Creek, later that night. The moon has gone down. The camera pans slowly down the creek, and as it reaches the point nearest where the crater was, we see that Bluebird Creek is entirely gone, replaced by a boggy, sumpy, squelchy mass of growing green weeds, some of them perhaps 9 feet high. They block the stream and perhaps 4 feet of its course, and then the Bluebird Creek reemerges. Both banks are coated with the stuff as far as the eye can see. The road near Jordy's house, part of the 2-lane blacktop, is also grown over with the weeds. This shot shows no other houses, only trees. It may serve to enforce Jordy's isolation. At Jordy's dooryard, the growth is also spurted here. The entire dooryard is overgrown, and the sides of the house are a shaggy mass of growing plants. Likewise, the porch. Some of the auto parts are almost hidden by the stuff. In Jordy's living room, on the TV, the Star-Spangled Banner is playing. The camera pans slowly across the littered room to Jordy. His arms are green and shaggy with the growth. It's heavier than most around his mouth and chin, like the beard of cypress moss. We can also see growths coming down his cheeks in zigzag patterns. To borrow from an old R&B song, the stuff is growing along the tracks of his tears. Jordy jerks on his chair and opens his eyes, except we see that his right eye is gone. Growing out of it is a mini forest of green.
Oh my God. What a dream.
Abruptly, he remembers. He throws himself out of the chair and runs for the bathroom. We hear him scream. The tub in the bathroom. Jordy's green hands come into frame and turn on both taps on full. A moment later, he slams the plug into the drain and the tub begins to fill. We hear the sound of his harsh, tortured breathing. In the bathroom, Jordy is tearing his shirt off, exposing his chest, which is also green and shaggy with growth. In the background, the sound of the tub is filling with water. In the mirror over the wash basin, we see a grizzled old man suddenly coming into view. He stands watching Jordy who bends to shuck his pants. As he does, Jordy's eyes widen with fresh terror.
Not there, please. God, not there.
Jordy.
Jordy registers extreme fright. He turns around and stares at the old man.
Dad? But you're dead. Been dead, Christ, 3 years almost.
I'm not really here at all, Jordy. I'm just in your mind.
Daddy, what do you want?
You ain't going to get into that tub, are you?
Daddy, it itches all over me. I gotta cool off.
No. It's the water that it wants. Don't you know that?
It's 10,000 times worse than that poison ivy, Daddy. I can't stand it. I'll go crazy.
You get into the water, Jordy, you might as well be signing your death warrant.
Doesn't matter. We're goner anyway. Ain't I, Daddy?
The camera moves in on Jordy's tortured face until Dad is no longer in the frame.
I'm gone. I'm gone, ain't I, Dad? The stuff out of the meteor got me, and I'm gone, ain't I? Ain't I?
He opens his eye. His good one, rather, and looks around. In the bathroom, his dad is gone.
Daddy?
After a moment, he turns to the tub and turns off the taps. He's naked, although we can only see him from the waist up. That's bad enough. Jordy looks at the water, fascinated. We can see a war of emotions on his face. At last, the attraction of water is more than he can stand. The possibility of assuaging the itch, even for a while, is too attractive. With an inarticulate scream, Jordy plunges in. Sounds of splashing, frantic, and paddling.
Oh, better. Oh.
In the living room, sounds of paddling and splashing are muted. Green stuff growing everywhere, hanging off of the TV and runners. On the TV, nothing but snow. In the Bluebird Creek, growth is everywhere as far as the eye can see. In Jordy's dooryard, ditto. The house rises out of the greenery like a forgotten monument. In Jordy's bedroom, the room is empty, but the camera lingers briefly. It's messy, slipshod room of a longtime bachelor who has no women. The bedclothes have been thrown back. Green weeds are growing out of the sheets, on the pillows, and the threadbare rug. The pop-off vodka bottle is empty and the overturned near the door. It's also growing. The camera moves out through the door and down the hall. There's a trail of weeds leading down the stairs. About halfway, there's a Tupperware orange juice pitcher, and there's the weeds grow quite higher. At the head of the stairs, where you would turn right to go down, is a circular Judas window. And the new daylight is almost obscured by the growing weeds. Faintly, we hear the sounds of what might be human sobbing. The camera descends the stairs. Weeds are growing out of them. At the bottom of the short hall, the camera moves forward. At the end of the hall, the living room. It's a jungle. We can barely make out the furniture that was there before. It is nearly overgrown. Stuff hangs down from the ceiling. It's just everywhere. The sobbing sounds are louder. The camera moves forward, pushing through the growth the way the jungle explorer would have through the heavy underbrush. Jordy begins to speak from the kitchen while we're moving, but his voice is barely human. It's slobbery and strange.
Please, God, let my luck be in just this once.
The camera enters the kitchen. In the foreground, we see a rifle, and there we see Jordy's hands are desperately trying to manipulate the slide. They're not really hands at all, but flapping overgrown green growths. The slide comes close with a heavy clicking sound. The rifle leaves the frame. We only see a stove. Greenery is sprouting briskly from all four burners.
Please, God, just this once.
A long silence, then a single gunshot sound, followed by the sound of a thud. Exterior Jordy's field, a long shot, sunrise. The creek is gone. The field is gone. Everywhere there is nothing but an expanse of growing greenery. A road junction shortly after sunrise. This is the junction of the dirt road, presumably leading back to Jordy's house and Route 26. The weeds from the space are growing of the dirt road up the tar. In the foreground on the Route 26 is a sign, Castle Rock, 5. Portland, 37. Boston, 188. The camera moves in on Boston 188 and holds there for a moment. Dissolves to interior Jordy's kitchen. Some time has passed because the kitchen is now nearly overgrown as the living room was. The stove is barely visible. Weeds fill the sink and they're growing over the dish strainer, the cupboards, etc. Camera pans down to the barrel of a rifle. Even this is beginning to sprout. Camera moves up to the rifle barrel with the trigger. A clump of weeds appears to be gripping it. Now the camera moves back and we see a huge hulk of weeds lying on the floor. It's a vaguely man-like shape, but that's all. From the side of the thing's head, one blue eye stares at the camera with an extremity of gazed horror. Freeze frame. This freeze frame, as before, becomes a comic picture taking up half the page, and in the panels directly above it we see the two foregoing scenes. Jordy's overgrown field in one, and the weeds reaching the road junction with the mileage sign underneath it. The caption for the final words read, "You should decide for yourself if Jordy Verrill finally had a piece of good luck when he managed to pull the trigger. But don't think too long, kiddies. Our next fable of fear awaits." Sound of thunder and rain in the background again as the camera draws back. On the facing page this time is another house ad, this one purveying subscriptions to Creepshow in the back issues. The wind flips another page, and in these two pages, we see the third story beginning. The camera moves in on the splash page. This one shows a man in work fatigues with a long key ring on his belt, glancing in the air at the coin as he is preparing to catch. A large push broom rests up against the wall. Behind him, we see the stairs going up, and beneath him is a dark space a man would have to crawl into or sort of duck walk if he wanted to get in there at all. Behind the stairs, a hallway, lit by old-fashioned globe-type lights, lead away. Overhead, there is an impression of gloom and solitude. The title of this story is The Crate. As with the others, the sound of the storm fades in as the camera moves in on the splash page, and the printed matter fades out, leaving the first comic drawing, then a freeze frame that comes to life. The coin which the janitor has flipped rises into the air, perhaps catching a gleam of light with the hanging globes of the hallway. It comes back down, and he fumbles the catch. The coin strikes the floor with a tingling sound and rolls onto the stairs. The janitor takes one grab at it and misses.
There, look at that. Fuck a diddle.
He just stands there for a minute, obviously not wanting to go into that space under the stairs. Then he gets his push broom, uses the business end of it to sweep away the cobwebs that have overgrown the triangular space, and leans it back against the wall. He crawls underneath, out of sight. For a moment, there's silence. Then,
what the hell? Christ!
He crawls back out, looking decidedly dirty and cobwebby. He looks back underneath. There is an expression of some excitement on his face.
Guess I gotta call the professor. Bradley. Yeah, that's what I gotta do.
The janitor hurries back up the stairs. The camera lingers for a while on that triangular, rather sinister hole. Exterior, someone's backyard, a back lawn with Wilma Northrop. Camera is close up on Wilma, not a very lovely sight. She's laughing, or perhaps braying would be a better word, her mouth wide open, exposing all 900 of her piranha teeth. Camera draws back a little, and we see she's holding a drink in a plastic cup. There's a lawn party in progress, maybe 40 or 50 people all told. We see a simmering barbecue. Standing with Wilma is Henry Northrop, her husband, a man of about 40 who looks both distinguished and henpecked. Completing the trio is Dexter Bradley, a bespectacled, rather handsome man, perhaps 5 years older than Henry. Several people have glanced over at the trio at the sound of Wilma's harsh laughter. Henry and Dexter notice and shrink a little. Wilma is oblivious. She's wearing a screaming yellow stretch pants and a loathsome green blouse. Can we get Liz Taylor to reprise her role from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? She would be perfect as Wilma, who is the apotheosis of the high-riding, ball-cutting, 100% dyed-in-the-wool bitch. She's also well on her way to being shit-faced.
Oh, Dexter, you are such a child. You and Henry both such children. But at least Henry has me to take care of him. Don't you, dear?
Yes, Bill.
The host comes over with a young couple. The young couple has that look about them of people who are new. A little hesitant, a little wary. Richard, Tabby, I'd like to introduce you to Dexter Stanley, who is a professor emeritus in the zoology department. Dex, this is Richard and Tabby Raymond. Richard is new in the math department.
Oh, nice to meet you both. What a lovely name you have, Mrs. Raymond. Well, I know. I'm very handsome.
Actually, it's Tabitha.
Harry, please, Professor Stanley.
This Dex will do.
Dex.
And this is Henry and Wilma Northrop in the English.
Just call me Billy. Everybody does.
Tabitha Raymond recoils a little. Her husband blinks. Henry Northrop looks actively pained, and the host also shows a moment of strain. Wilma continues, oblivious.
If you need someone to show you the ropes, hon, you come see me. I know the best stores. You buying or renting?
Renting right now, but
That's all for the best, honey. Buying real estate in a college town is a friggin' pain in the ass. You take my word for it.
There's a moment of awkward silence. Henry's in the English department, and Wilma is...
Oh, I just take care of Henry. Believe me, he needs it. Did you ever meet a man who didn't? What's the matter with you two? You're not drinking.
Well, actually, we just got here.
We can fix that. You have to lube the machine. That's what I always tell Henry. You come on with me. You just stay put until I get back, Henry.
She draws the Raymonds away, a little against their will. She's chattering a mile a minute. The host looks after her with real distaste for a moment, and then follows them. Both Henry and Dex have seen this expression, and we know that Wilma Northrop is an old hand at playing the role of the party monster.
Chalk up another kill for Billy. Red Baron pales in insignificance compared to her.
Hey, come on. It's not that bad.
No.
Dex does not reply. He's a fundamentally honest man, and we can see it, indeed. Pretty bad. Henry drains his drink and looks at the cubes reflectively.
I think I'll go and get another. Maybe 5 or 6. Or 8 or 10.
Don't have too many Dex. Henry, it's chess night.
Henry brightens a little at this.
Chess. Right. Well, that's something. It's also Wilma's night out.
From across the lawn near the barbecue comes Wilma's harsh tone, telling someone,
Just call me Billy. Everybody does.
Grown to hate her, Dex.
Henry, you don't.
A maid has approached during the last exchange, and she now breaks in.
Pardon, would one of you be Professor Bradley? I am. There's a telephone call for you. All right, thank you. It's probably Charlie Geeson with his damned ear mites again. He's determined he's going to win a Nobel for that before he's 24. He might just do it.
Redstone?
Yeah.
Must be really after a Nobel if he's working at Amberson Hall during August.
He's downstairs. It's cool. Excuse me, Henry.
No, of course.
Dex walks towards the house. Henry watches him go, and then is distracted by the harsh, cawing laughter of his wife from the patio. He glances towards her and winces at what he sees. Wilma, in the midst of a group of people, apparently holding the Raymonds by main force, one of her arms on each of the Raymonds' arms. Henry squeezes his plastic drink glass so hard in his hand that it shatters. There's some blood. After a moment, he takes out a handkerchief and mops at it. In the study of the host's house, Dex is on the phone. Behind him is a party, which we can see the lawn party continuing. Wilma Northrop is very much in evidence. Henry is walking towards the bar, and we see the setup on one side of the barbecue.
So I thought I ought to call you anyway. See what you thought, Professor Bradley.
That's fine. Who told you I was here? Charlie Geeson?
Yeah. I sent him out for a hamburger, Doc. Just about twisted his arm. I swear that kid don't know if it's day or night once he gets going.
I quite agree. And I thank you for your interest, but I'd almost be willing to guess that crate's full of National Geographics or Zoological Reviews or back issues of Reader Digest.
The date on it said 1834. Did they publish the Reader's Digest way back then, Professor Bradley?
Dex's eyebrows go up at this intelligence.
1834. Really?
Yeah. It's stenciled right on the side. I had to wipe off the dust so I could read it. It says June 19th, 1834, and then something about Arctic expedition.
Dex is really interested for the first time.
Arctic expedition?
Yeah. And I didn't even think anybody got up there until 1912 or something.
Well, maybe there's something more interesting in your crate than National Geographics after all, Mike. I'll check it first thing on Monday.
Oh, That's my day off.
During this, Dex has been turning casually to the window. Looking out, he sees the lawn party tableau, Wilma making a loud, obnoxious ass of herself, Henry watching from the bar where he is apparently trying out for the U.S. drinking team. Henry still holds the handkerchief in his cut palm. Dex's face reflects his distress.
Well, maybe I could get up this afternoon. It's a pretty dull party.
Say, would that be great? My buddy Tommy, he's over in the geology department. He says there's all kinds of stuff tucked away on an old campus like this. Why, just last year they found...
Dex is still looking out at Henry, and his face is sad. Interior Amberson Hall day. It's a big old-fashioned building, Gothic in style. It's shadowy inside. Dex and the janitor are walking down the main hall. Behind them, the tall double doors have been wedged open to let in hot summer daylight. Sound of echoing footfalls in the stillness.
And when they moved the president into his new house over by the mall, they found all kinds of stuff in the attic of the old one. Why, they found stuff that went back to 300 years. They found this one gadget, something called a gasogen, that hardly anybody knew what it was.
Ancestor of modern bottle of tonic water and mixer. First, there was the gasogen, and then soda siphon, and now bottle mixers.
Yeah, that's just what it was. And somebody said it might be worth $1,000. There's all kinds of old stuff around, ain't there?
They reach the stairway leading down to the basement level. To the right is a large lecture hall with its double doors propped open, and Dex glances in. There's a scaffolding on one wall and a paint-spattered canvas drop cloth on the floor.
Ain't the smell of the paint wicked in this heat?
They start down. At the foot of the stairs, the camera is looking up at Dex and the janitor as they descend.
Your friend is right, Mike. There are all kinds of peculiar things around this old campus. Just last year we found an antique gerbil run up the 4th floor. Lovely glass panels, probably worth 10 times as much as your friend's gasogen. It's in the Museum of Natural History now, but I'm betting your crate's full of magazines or just plain junk. Still, that Arctic expedition business on the date.
Kind of gets you, doesn't it?
Dex looks at him, then smiles.
Yeah, it kind of does.
During all of this, they have reached the bottom of the stairs and gone around to the triangular space going underneath the stairs. Dex squats, but we can see nothing in the gloom.
You didn't open it?
No. I figured that was for you. It's been nailed shut. So anyway.
Why didn't you tell Charlie Geeson he was here?
Well, he's just a grad student. And with Professor Hunting over there in England, I figured you're the boss.
Charlie's not back yet.
No. I guess maybe he met his girl over there at the Lion House.
Can't see much. You got a flash?
Yeah. Just a second.
The janitor walks off. Dex peers under the stairs, then makes as if to go under. The hanging cobwebs dissuade him. He recoils from them with a grimace of disgust and then brushes them away with his hand. The janitor returns with a 4-cell flashlight and hands it to Dex.
This'll show it up.
Dex turns it and shines it into the crawl space under the stairs. Interior, the crate under the stairs. Might as well be night under there. The flashlight beam wanders aimlessly and centers on an old-fashioned wooden crate pushed up against the far wall. Overhead, we can see the stairs slanting up a zigzag pattern. Everything is dusty, cobwebby, aged. The crate is thickly coated with dust. We can see stenciling in a fan shape where the janitor had brushed the side of it. It reads, "Ship to Horlicks University via Julia Carpenter, Arctic Expedition, June 19th, 1834.
What were you doing under there anyway?
Interior of the basement. The janitor looks slightly embarrassed. Dex is gazing at him curiously.
I flipped a quarter trying to decide if I should buff the 2nd floor hallway first or wash the lab windows. Only I missed it when it came down and it rolled under there. I probably would have let it go, but that was my only quarter for the Coke machine.
Dex starts to duck walk onto the stairs, Eve approaching the crate. He recoils again, brushing away more hanging spider webs. this time using the body of a flashlight. The beam bobs crazily on the underside of the stairs.
Not very nice under there, is it? God, I hate tight places.
No reply from Dex. He has reached the crate, and he removes the handkerchief from his back pocket to dust it off. Dust rises, thick and choking. Choking motes dance in the light. Dex coughs and waves the dust away from his face.
You okay, Professor Bradley?
Fine. Help me get this out. I think we might really have something here.
Looking from under the stairs, the two of them gradually manage to get the crate out, sliding first one end forward, then another. Sound of them grunting and panting with exertion. It's clear that whatever it is in the crate is very heavy. At last, with a final burst of effort, they get it out into the hallway. The janitor sits by one end, Dex by another. Both are breathing hard, and for a moment, they don't speak. In this light, we can see that the crate is a really well-made box, the boards fitting tight into one another with no space in between. It's more like a wooden safe. Dex brushes cobwebs out of his hair with a grimace.
That's a well-made crate, Doc. My grandfather used to make them like this. Except that his weren't pegged together like this one is. That was a little before his time.
Dex leans over and sees that the crate is indeed pegged together instead of nailed up. Then he gets to his feet.
Give me a hand.
But where are we taking it, Doc?
Down in the main lab.
In the basement lab, this is a long, old-fashioned laboratory with white-tiled walls. At the far end is an old-fashioned slate blackboard covered with signs and equations. On one wall, an old chart showing all the philia of creation hangs down. Most of the desks and tables are deserted, but in one, a litter of books, papers, old styrofoam coffee containers, a Texas Instrument calculator, and a glass aquarium full of little bugs. This is where Charlie Garrison has been working. Dex and the janitor come in, each at one end of the crate. It's plenty heavy. The janitor is red-faced, puffing and blowing. They get it over to one of the unoccupied tables.
Put it here.
Thank Christ.
They toss it up on the table. Dex leans back, breathing heavily, but the janitor goes on looking at the crate. He's frowning, puzzled, his head slightly cocked to the side. After a moment, Dex notices.
What's wrong?
Felt like something moved in there. When we put it on the table. Did you feel it?
No. If there were living specimens in here, I doubt they'd be feeling very lively after 146 years.
Sure. But it felt like something shifted. I guess I've been spending too much time in the hot sun. Huh, Doc?
I guess so. Let's get this open.
Sure. I got a hammer and chisel right upstairs in my closet. Just wait while I go get him.
Dex watches him go, rather amused by his scientific excitement, we feel. We hear the sound of the janitor's footfalls receding into the hall, then climbing the stairs. Dex looks at the crate a moment longer, perhaps runs his hand over it, and then walks over to the litter of Charlie Garrison's papers. The crate is still in the foreground, but Dex is across the room, his back turned to the crate. A light chittering sound comes from the crate. Light, hard to hear, but rather ugly and unpleasant. It begins to move, just slightly. Dex sees none of this. Interior, the foyer of a nice faculty home, late day. Harry and Wilma Northrop are in the foyer. Wilma is preparing to go out, and she's obviously drunk. She's also reading Henry the Riot Act.
And don't leave the pans just soaking like you did last time, Henry. Scrub them. Just because you and your intellectual friend are going to play chess doesn't mean you get to leave a mess for me. Pick up after yourself a little bit. Wipe the stove.
Yes, Billy.
And kindly have him out of here before my classes are over. Frankly, that tobacco he smokes makes me want to Ralph.
Yes, Billy.
Yes, Billy. Yes, Billy. Dear Henry, what would you do without me?
I don't know, Billy.
Well, on that, we're even, Henry. Because I don't know either. Enjoy your chess.
She goes out and crosses the lawn to the car parked at the curb, weaving slightly, gets in, races the motor, and drives off.
Do me a favor, Wilma. Why don't you have a few more on the way and kill yourself, you bitch?
He closes the door and goes back down the hall. Interior, Henry's study, late day. This is a peaceful, masculine room untouched by Wilma's giddy, vicious, eccentric whirl. Sound of a ticking clock, slow and soothing. There's a chessboard set up at a nice small table by the window, and Henry is just finishing up arranging the chess pieces. He gets up, goes to the dresser, which serves as a bar, and opens one of the low cupboards, takes out a decanter of whiskey. For the first time, Henry himself looks serene, at peace. He sets out two nice glasses, one on either side of the whiskey decanter. All of this has a feeling of a much-loved ritual. He glances at the clock. It's 4:45. A wristwatch. The wristwatch also reads 4:45. The camera moves back and we see Dex standing at the lab table the crate is on. The janitor comes in with a heavy hammer and a medium-long chisel and joins Dex, who reaches for the tools.
Let me do this for you, Professor Bradley.
Dex hesitates a moment, sees how hopeful and excited the janitor is, and nods with a little smile.
Be my guess, Mike. It's your find.
The janitor slips the chisel under one of the top boards, prepares to strike with a hammer, and then glances to Dex again.
Probably nothing in here but a bunch of rocks and plants, so old they'll turn to dust if you touch them. But I'm pretty hot to see just the same.
Tell you the truth, so am I.
They grin at each other, and the janitor goes to work on the first board. Sound of a hammer, very loud. Interior, utter darkness. The sound of a hammer and chisel are magnified. We're inside the crate. Suddenly, two large green eyes with slit pupils open in the dark. They look ugly, crazed, and furious. In the lab, the janitor continues working with the hammer and chisel. It'd be nice to keep the audience on pins and needles for as long as possible during this. The director will know how better than I do. At last, the first board comes loose at the janitor's end. As it comes up, Dex reaches across the crate and pulls it up, snapping it off at the other end. He puts it on the lab table behind him.
Can't see a friggin' thing. Where'd I leave my flashlight, Doc? You remember?
Never mind. Go on, peel it off.
Okay.
He goes to work on the second board. Wham, wham, wham. As it comes up at last, the janitor pushes it. Dex grabs it and breaks it off, as he did with the first board, and puts it on the lab table. The janitor likewise loosens the third board, and Dex puts it on the lab table. The janitor is sweating a bit now, and both of them look pretty excited. The janitor begins on the fourth board, and then stops. A very low whistling sound is coming from the crate.
You hear that?
What?
That whistling.
I don't.
But he does. The whistling sound is a lot louder now, like a tea kettle reaching a rolling boil. The janitor leans over the box and peers in.
Something in there, Doc. Something shiny. Christ. It looks like a couple of emeralds.
Abruptly, the janitor reaches in, and then things happen fast.
Don't.
The whistling sound stops, and there's a sudden, furious growling sound. The thing in the crate almost seems to be jabbering. It ends with a hoarse snarl and a chomping sound. The crate suddenly moves and becomes lodged against an instrument mount. The janitor's arm is suddenly yanked into the crate, and he screams.
Help me! Help me, Doc! It's got me! It's biting me!
Dex runs around the table to the janitor. Inside the crate, the thing goes on snarling and jabbering. The janitor gives a mammoth tug on part of his arm, about down below the elbow, comes out of the crate, and we see the shirt is bloody and savagely tattered by bite marks. He's bleeding profusely and screaming. Abruptly, the thing in the crate yanks him back down into the shoulder. We hear a snapping sound, just as breaking bone, and droplets of blood spray out of the crate as the janitor screams.
Get me out! It's biting me! Oh God! That hurts! It hurts! It hurts!
Dex grabs the janitor by the other arm and pulls with all his might. No result at all. The thing in the crate has a mighty good hold on the janitor. Dex, at this point, is bullshit with fear and panic.
Hold on now.
Dex gives him a tremendous tug. For a moment, part of the janitor's upper arm comes out, and we see something on it. Fur, eyes, whatever it is, it's savaging the janitor's arm. Then it's pulled back down again. We hear snarling, gobbling, a sort of breathless whistle in between. Dex tugs fruitlessly at the janitor's arm. Blood has splattered the lab table. The janitor screams again, and then his eyes roll up and then sag backwards, held up only by the thing in the crate, which has his arm. The janitor is yanked towards the crate, and as his head falls against it, the thing leaps up again. We may see its claws, but it'll be too fast to get a really good look, and it rips his throat open. Blood flies everywhere in a spray, on the table, at the sink insert, into the table, on the white tiled wall. Dex blunders backwards, hand clapping to his cheeks, eyes bulging. The thing is drawing the janitor into the crate, little by little, his feet now dangling off the floor. Inside the crate, the thing raves and chomps, whistling occasionally. There's a snapping sound at the janitor's neck, leaning against the boards of the crate, not yet taken off, breaks. His head is pulled inside. The rest of his body dangles at a grotesque angle.
He's dead. Oh, Jesus.
The remainder of the body, we can no longer see the head, begins to rock back and forth, the feet swaying as if dancing. Dex backs away, strikes the edge of the table where Charlie Garrison's stuff is scattered, and panics. He runs. The crate lurches again, and one of the janitor's shoulders disappears inside. The sounds from the crate continue. In the basement hallway, Dex runs towards the hall, and the camera follows. He runs up the stairs, falls, gets up again, and runs the rest of the way up to the top. At the entrance of the building, Charlie Garrison, a young man about 23, comes in through the double doors that have just been chalked open. He's slim, wearing an open-throated white shirt, drinking a milkshake through a straw. He starts down the hall, and Dex runs right into him, upsetting the milkshake, spilling it on both of them. Dex almost claws at Charlie. He is in a fever of panic.
Charlie, I'm freaking out, man. What?
Okay, all right. Professor Bradley, what?
Charlie, my boy, the janitor of the crate. It whistles. It whistles when it's hungry, when it's angry. My boy, we have campus.
Slow down, Professor Bradley. Slow down. I don't know what you're talking about.
Dex makes a conscious effort to get a hold of himself and speak rationally.
Charlie, listen. The janitor. You know Mike, the janitor?
Yes, of course I do.
Well, he found this crate this afternoon, and how he found it is not important, but he did. And I was at a cocktail party, and my housekeeper told me where he was, and then I called my home and...
Campus Horlicks University. The campus looks eerily deserted in this August lull. The sun hangs out over the horizon like a red infectious wound. Upper hallway, Dex and Charlie are now standing at the head of the stairs leading down to the basement level. The light has faded appreciably. To the right, we see the lecture hall and the painter's scaffold and the red canvas drop cloth beneath it.
And it just sucked him in. We've got to get to the campus police, Charlie. We've got to get somebody.
A little silence ensues. Charlie's trying to figure out how to respond to this. Dex, still scared out of his wits, but perhaps realizing how crazy it all sounds, is looking at his grad student pleadingly.
It's pretty far out, Professor Bradley.
It's true. I swear before God as my maker that it's true. Charlie, my boy, we got to get to campus security over here. We've got to.
Dex is not interrupted. He simply trails off, looking at Charlie with a pleading expression. There's a pause, a long one, and maybe we sense that Dex's very sanity depends on how Charlie will respond.
No, campus security's no good. One of them would stick his hand in that crate first thing. If I'm having trouble swallowing this, what the fuck are they gonna think?
Dex's expression is one of great relief. In spite of Charlie's caveat, at least he is believed, and that means a great deal.
I don't know what they think.
They think you've been off on a hell of a toot. No, they think we'd both been off on a hell of a toot, and got seeing Tasmanian devils instead of pink elephants. Besides, from what you say, the responsibility has been with the zoo department all along. Even if it's been 140 years, I think we ought to go down and see how the land lies before we do anything else.
But maybe out.
Oh, I doubt that.
He doesn't believe a word Dex has said, and Dex suddenly realizes it.
Charlie, please.
Just a quick check, okay? See how the land lays.
Charlie starts down the dark stairs.
Charlie, please don't go down there.
Just stay up there, Professor Bradley. I'll be right back.
Charlie disappears. We hear the sound of his footfalls moving off down the lower corridor towards the lab. Dex stands trembling at the side of the stairs, pitiably reduced to from the pleasant man we saw at the cocktail party by his fear.
I'll see it. I'll see the crate. I'll see Mike, the blood, and then he'll believe me. Charlie?
He stands at the top of the stairs for a beat, listening, then reluctantly starts down them. In the lab, close upon Charlie's face. Charlie's face is stunned and horrified. He is totally in different aspect from the man we saw upstairs in the hall. His mouth is trembling, and his eyes almost as big as serving platters. As the camera draws back, we see why. The table where the crate was now vacant, but there's blood everywhere. It's splattered on the table where the white tile wall. It's running down the legs of the table. Charlie begins to back away, and arms reach abruptly into the frame and grab him. It's Dex. Charlie recoils from him, and in the recoil, we see all we need out of the scenario as it is played out in Charlie's head.
There. You see the blood? Do you think I'm crazy now?
I've seen enough.
For God's sake, get a hold of yourself. You're a zoology major. You've seen blood before.
Charlie recovers himself a little bit, but his look at Dex is both accusing and fearful. Dex reads it.
You think I went crazy and killed him. Look at the floor, Charlie. Look there.
Dex points down and Charlie follows his finger. In the basement lab with Dex and Charlie.
What? What does it mean?
Following his lapse, Dex has gotten a hold of himself again.
It got out. That's what it means. I had hoped, grotesque as it may sound, that it had become pop-bound or something after all those years, but it got out, whatever it is. It pushed the crate off the table, and from the way the track looks, it pushed the crate back under the stairs where it had been safe for so long.
The body. Where is that, Professor Bradley? Where's Mike?
I don't know.
Charlie turns abruptly and goes back towards the double doors in the basement corridor beyond.
Where are you going?
Charlie doesn't answer. Dex runs after him. In the basement corridor near the stairs, evening. Charlie, approaching the area of the triangular hole under the stairs, sees the janitor's big 4-cell flashlight lying on its side. It's almost underneath the stairs. He picks it up and turns it on. In the spotlight, we see the wide track of blood leading out of the stairs, and just under the overhang, a piece of bloody gray cloth, part of the janitor's uniform. Dex runs up and breathing hard just as Charlie hunkers down and shines light underneath, spotlighting the mutilated crate, which is once more against the far wall, but a little askew.
Charlie, for God's sake, be careful. If you'd seen that thing.
Don't worry.
Charlie shoots the beam of light around, but it's spotlighting one of the janitor's work shoes. It's been savaged, the leather bitten right through, the laces hanging broken. It's quite near the crate in a pool of blood.
Christ. It looks like it went through a hay baler.
Now do you believe me?
Charlie leans out of the overhang, reaching. Dex yanks him back.
Don't go near it.
I don't want the crate. I want that shoe. I want to measure the bite marks. Maybe we can figure out what we're dealing with here. Just let me.
Charlie leans in again, and suddenly something comes out of the crate at him. We see those huge glowing eyes again. The thing is whistling and yammering. Charlie tries to pull back, and the back of his head connects with the underside of the stairs. He looks up, screams, and the thing from the crate lands on his face, hammering and whistling and biting. Dex yanks back on Charlie's shirt, but the thing from the crate suddenly looks over at him, bares his teeth, and hisses. Dex backs away, hands to his face, totally freaked. Charlie screams and beats the thing on his face. More blood. After a while, his struggle lessens, then ceases. He falls forward. He's under the stairs from the waist up. His buttocks and leg protrude into the hallway. Dimly, we can see the thing working him over. We catch the occasional glimpse of its eyes. Slowly, Charlie's limp body begins to slide under the stairs as the thing chatters and growls. His feet disappear into the shadows.
I'm sorry.
Horrible sounds from under the stairs now. Smacking sounds, eating sounds. Dinner is served. The thing begins to whistle, low this time, contented. For Dex, that does it. He backs away, strikes the wall, recoils in fear, and runs up the stairs again in an utter panic. Camera moves down to the triangular hole under the stairs. The whistling sound goes on. In the parking lot, Dex runs across the nearly deserted parking lot to his car, drags the driver's side door open, and gets in. His hair is all but standing on end. He screams out of the parking lot and drives down the road. Outside Henry's house, Dex's car pulls up here. He stumbles out of the car and runs across the lawn, leaving the driver's side door of his car open. He looks decidedly wild and disheveled. Dex does not ring the bell. He leans on it. The door opens, and after a few moments, and Henry, now wearing a casual shirt and jeans, comes out. He displays consternation at Dex's appearance.
Dex, where the hell, what the hell have you been?
Dex almost pushes him inside. In the hallway, Twilight.
Oh, we have to stop it, Henry. We have to. 2 men are dead already, and we have to. Oh, dear Christ.
Dex, slow down. You're going way too fast for me. What happened? Who's dead?
Dex gets a hold of himself. He looks around.
Wilma?
Gone to her class. Probably knock everybody over with the bourbon fumes. Never mind her. Talk to me, Dex. What happened?
Can I have a drink first? I want a big drink, Henry.
Sure, yeah. Come to the study.
In Henry's study, it is as we saw it previously. Now it has the addition of a low light from shaded lamps, the soothing ticking sound of the clock. Dex sits at the chair by the window, more in control now, but still a wreck, all in all. He clasps his hand nervously between his thighs. Henry pours him a pretty good drink from the decanter, then looks at him. Dex is looking out the window, and pours again, filling the glass to the brim. He pours himself one, brings it over, and gives Dex the big one.
How?
He raises the glass slightly to Dex, and Dex takes no notice. He spills some of the drink, then drains the rest of it. All of it. Then settles back, closes his eyes, and blows out breath.
The only time I ever saw someone do that was in the movies. What's going on, Dex? Tell me.
Him and Dad, and I could be blamed. I know that's a terrible consideration to have at a time like this, but it could be. Yeah, it could be my ass, Henry. But it wasn't me. It was the thing in the crate. And I don't even know what it is.
He utters a high, shrieking laugh and holds his glass out for a refill. After a moment's thought, Henry gets it for him.
Who's dead?
Mike, the janitor in Amberson Hall, and Charlie Garrison, a grad student. He wanted to measure the bite marks. Henry! He guess he got his chance. I surely guess he did.
Dex, I can't do you any good unless you stop being so goddamn elliptical. Tell me what happened from the beginning.
Dex takes the fresh drink, drains half of it, and then nods.
All right. I think I can do that now. Thank God for you, Henry.
Okay, first things first. Are you sure your grad student and this janitor are dead?
Yes. The bodies are gone. Under the stairs, but the blood. Blood, you know?
When you left the party?
Yes, that was Mike. Mike called on the phone.
Exterior, Henry's street. A quiet suburban street, people mowing grass, hosing flowers, kids on bikes. In the foreground stands Dex's car with the door open. The street lights all pop on at once, and we see that night has arrived. In Henry's study, Dex's glass stands empty on the small table. Henry is smoking a pipe with a poker face.
I came here. That's how it stands now. What am I going to do, Henry? Just what the hell am I going to do now?
I don't know.
I had 100 crazy ideas about how to get rid of it. Coming over here, I kept thinking about Writer's Quarry. You know that place?
Yeah, I know it.
I kept thinking that would be deep enough if there was only a way to get that crate out there. I kept thinking I don't know anymore. Henry, am I going crazy?
Henry puts a hand on his friend's shoulder.
No.
Dex puts his hands on his face. Henry is looking down at him, and perhaps here we see his face change. It becomes cold, thoughtful.
I gotta use the facility, Dex. I'll be right back, okay?
Okay, sure.
We'll decide what has to be done.
All right, Henry.
Henry goes to the study door. Once here, he pauses to look back thoughtfully at Dex. And again, his face and eyes seem coldly thoughtful. Then he goes out. Interior in the dark, there's a buzzing sound, and the blackness is thrown back by the cold fluorescent bar. We're in Henry's bathroom, and Henry is staring at himself in the mirror. His face is grim and yet frightened. Different emotions seem to be warring here. In the grimness, coldness, those emotions win. He crosses to the mirror and pulls it back, revealing a medicine cabinet. From this, he takes an unmarked bottle of pills, uncaps it, and shakes 3 into his hand. Pills, not gel capsules. After a moment, he adds a 4th and recaps the bottle and shuts the medicine cabinet. He stares at himself for another long moment, and we see that he has reached some sort of cold resolution. He flicks off the light switch. Darkness again. In Henry's study, Dex is still sitting at the window as Henry comes in. He, Dex, looks in control of himself, but dazed.
Let's get you another drink, Dex.
No, I think I've had enough. It's no wonder I'm not plastered out of my gourd. Shock, I guess.
One more while we talk this over. For both of us. We may need it.
Okay.
Henry moves to the bar, and we see that Dex is in the mirror, and the camera follows Henry. As they continue to talk, Henry pours 2 drinks from the decanter and drops all 4 of the pills into one of them. With his body blocking the action, he stirs the pills with a swizzle stick. He may speak a little louder to mask the sound.
After we have this one, Dex, I'm driving you home in the MG.
Home? But
I'll leave a note for Wilma telling her where we've gone, and when we get to your place, we'll call.
He brings the drinks over and hands one to Dex.
Who do you suggest, Dex? Campus security, the town cops, state police?
Ghostbusters. But do you believe me? Don't you? Just say you do, Henry.
I believe you, Dex. Hey, now drink your drink. Ow.
He tips the glass towards Dex, and after a moment, Dex returns the salute and takes a big swallow of his drink. He grimaces, and Henry watches him with hidden apprehension.
I don't know what the thing could be or where it came from, but yeah, I believe you, Dexter. Hey, finish your drink while I write my wife, and for Christ's sake, let's get out of here before she gets back.
He moves towards the desk, and Dex gets up and goes to him, pulls at his sleeve.
Won't go anywhere near Emberson Hall, will we? Promise me, Henry, we'll stay away from there, won't we?
Henry stares at his friend and then speaks with great sincerity and solemnity.
Is the Pope shit in the woods?
Exterior, Henry Northrop's house. The door opens and Henry and Dex come out. Henry is supporting Dex, who can barely walk. He might be drunk, but we know better.
Can hardly walk. Guess I'm plastered out of a fucking cord anyway, huh?
Henry is leading Dex towards the garage.
You've got a perfect right. Don't you worry, Dex. I'm gonna take care of it. I'm gonna take care of everything.
Just give my car. My car's there.
I'll take care of it. Don't worry.
Henry nearly props Dex against the side of the garage while he runs the door up its track. As he does so, Dex collapses in a side of comic slide, his buttocks sliding down the side of the garage as his knees unhinge. Henry gets him up, loops his arm over his neck, and gets Dex into the garage. He is almost carrying Dex now. After a moment, the sound of the car sputtering comes to life, and then an MG midget, top up, backs out of the garage. Henry backs it down to the foot of the driveway and then parks. Interior, Henry's MG. Henry's behind the wheel. Dex is snoring in the passenger bucket, head down, mouth open.
Dex, you awake? Dex.
No response. Dex is snoring noisily. Henry pulls on the emergency brake.
Sleep well, old friend.
He gets out of the car and goes back into the house. In Henry's kitchen, there's a note on the kitchen table. Henry opens the door, steps in and goes to the table, crumples the note and puts it in his pocket. He tears another sheet of paper off of the note reader by the kitchen phone and begins to write. The camera pans down so we can read it. Dear Billy, just got a call from Dexter Stanley. He's hysterical. Some sort of indiscretion with one of his female grad students. He's at Amberson Hall and so is the girl. Can you come? I know you don't like Dex much, but this sounds like a scandal that could ruin his career. Come as quickly as you can, Henry. Henry looks at the note and smiles. He leaves it on the table and then leaves the kitchen. In front of Henry's house, the MG pulls away from the curb and the lights coming on. In the bedroom, a neat, austere little room, Henry enters, practically dragging Dex, who is sagging and muttering. Henry gets him up over to the bed and lets him down with a gasp of relief. After a moment to recover himself, he gets his bedclothes back and removes Dex's shoes. Then he gets Dex onto the covers, fully dressed. He goes to the door, looks back once with kindness and compassion, and then turns the light off and closes the door. Interior, Henry's MG. He's driving across town, driving fast. He glances at his watch once. We should get the idea that he's working against time. The Amberson Hall parking lot. There are two parked cars here, and one is a fairly big, and the parked cars are so far apart the entire place looks deserted. Henry's MG turns in and parks. He gets out and hurries against the building. Amberson Hall with Henry. The place is shadowy and almost totally black, but Henry doesn't turn on the lights, afraid of being noticed. He moves slowly towards the stairs, breathing hard, another place where maybe a little tension can be strung out. As he reaches the head of the stairs, things get a little brighter because the fluorescents in the downstairs lab have been left on. Before starting down the stairs, Henry glances through the open doors at his left at the lecture hall. He sees the scaffolding, the painter's drop cloth, and then goes for the downstairs. In the basement lab, the lab was exactly as we saw it last. Charlie's papers, bugs, and calculator on one table, a heap of boards from the crate on another. The table where the crate was is splattered with drying blood. So is the wall behind it. We can see the track of the floor where the crate has been pushed back towards the stairs. Henry comes in, looks at the silent, bloody scene, clasps a hand over his mouth. For a moment, he struggles with his gorge. His eyes are wide and horrified. He turns for a moment, looking nervously back down the hall and towards the stairs, and then turns back to the lab. He crosses to the table, and we see the blood has formed a straight edge of three sides, the fourth being blurred, presumably where the crate was pushed off of the edge, complete with right angles. It is the complete shape of the crate, final proof that it was really there. Henry glances at his watch again and hurries out of the room. Outside of Henry's house, the Northrop second car, the wagon, pulls up to the curb. Wilma gets out and walks across the lawn, weaving a bit. She may or may not be any more drunk than when we last saw her, but we're not sure. But she's sure no soberer. At the door, she fumbles for her purse for her keys, finds them at last, and then tries the door before using them. It opens.
Henry, how many times did I have to tell you to lock the goddamn door? Henry?
No answer. Wilma makes an irritated little sound and goes inside.
Hmm.
Interior corridor in Amberson Hall. Here is the door marked custodian. Henry hurries up and tries it. The knob turns, the door opens, and Henry heaves a sigh of relief. He finds the light switch inside, and the custodian's closet is flooded with yellow light. There's a little janitor's cart parked out there. Moving quickly, Henry begins to load it up with rags and cleaner. He puts a mop in the brackets at the end. He's sweating. With the cart full, he glances to his watch again, then pulls the cart out in the hall, snaps off the light, and shuts the door to the closet. He pushes the cart off in the hall. The kitchen of the Northrop house. Wilma comes in, snaps on the overhead fluorescent ring. She is looking rather pissed, not uncommon for Wilma. She looks around the kitchen, hands on her hips, and sees the note on the table. She grabs it up, ready to be furious with Henry, but as she reads, her expression becomes first startled, then thoughtful, then triumphant. She stuffs the note into her pocket and brays laughter.
Ha! Dex Bradley got caught playing hide the salami with some young piece of quiff. I'm not surprised.
She brays laughter again.
And I'm supposed to pull his iron out of the fire? Christ, what would you do without me, Henry?
Now her eyes are sparkling with a kind of vicious interest. This is obviously something she can't pass up. She turns off the light and goes out again.
Dex Bradley, that sanctimonious old goat.
In the basement of Amberson Hall, Henry is cleaning frantically. His sleeves are rolled up, his hair hanging down over his forehead. He's filled a sink with hot soapy water, and he's currently scrubbing the bloody table where the crate rested. He's moving fast, almost running. Outside of the Northrop house, the station wagon roars away from the curb. Back to the basement, Henry is down on his hands and knees like a lunatic washerwoman, scrubbing away at the crate's back trail. As he nears the hole at the stairs, he sees the flashlight and a pen. He pockets the pen, grabs the flashlight, and a low whistling sound comes from under the stairs. Henry freezes, his face a picture of fear. After a moment, the whistling stops, and he shines the light under the stairs. There's the crate, back against the wall, with most of the boards that are covering its top now off. Another pen, and Charlie's glasses. Henry snatches those out as quick as he can, and then glances at his watch once more. He hurries back down to the janitor's cart. Exterior in the parking lot, the Northrop station wagon pulls in and parks beside Henry's MG. Wilma gets out of the wagon and strides purposely towards the doors of Amberson Hall. Camera follows as she mounts the steps. At the upper corridor, just as before, it's very dark. Wilma enters and begins feeling her way along.
Henry? Henry? Where are you, Henry?
She shuffles on a ways further, and suddenly a shadow detaches itself from the blackness and grabs her. Wilma shrieks.
Christ, I didn't mean to scare you, Billy. Sorry.
You ought to be. What are you doing creeping around up here in the dark? Where's Dex? What kind of mess has he gotten himself in?
It's just easier to show you, I think. They're downstairs. Come on.
Henry leads her back towards the stairs, and as the light brightens, we get a better look at them both. Henry's sleeves are still rolled up, but he's combed his hair, and it doesn't look too tacky, except for his eyes, which are rather wild and starey. In the breast pocket are a couple of pens and Charlie Garrison's gold-rimmed glasses. Wilma snatches these out before Henry can stop her. One of the lenses is shattered.
What's this?
Well, I found...
Henry. Did he beat her?
Well...
How bad is she? Is she conscious?
It's better if you see for yourself. Just downstairs.
They start down. At the foot of the stairs, we're looking up at them as they descend. All at once, Henry begins to giggle. Wilma stares at him as if he's gone mad, which, in a way, is exactly what has happened. Henry looks back at her and begins to laugh.
What are you laughing about, Henry? Your best friend gets in a scrape with a girl and you're laughing?
Henry begins to laugh even harder. They reach the bottom of the stairs. His hand is on Wilma's arm. He speaks through his laughter.
Well, there's a funny side to it. Wait until you see. You'll think so too, Billy. It's pretty funny.
Let go of me. You're hurting my arm. You're hysterical, Henry. Exactly what I would have expected.
Oh, I don't think you'll expect this, Billy. This is going to be an entirely new experience.
He begins to lead her around at the space under the stairs. Wilma is alarmed at last.
The lab's the other way, Henry. I can see the light. What are you up to?
Yes, the lab. But the girls under the stairs, Billy. Wait until you see. That's so funny. The girls crawled under the stairs and she won't come out. She.
But he can't speak anymore. He only laughs in great loon-like bursts as they reach the triangular space.
Henry, what did he do to her?
Henry begins to push her into the space under the stairs. He's still laughing. After a surprised moment, Wilma begins to struggle with him.
You can get her out. I'm sure you can get her out. No trouble. No problem.
What are you doing? What are you doing, Henry?
What I should have done a long time ago. Get under there, Wilma. Just tell it to call you Billy, you bitch.
He's got her about halfway under, but she's fighting him tooth and nail, and Wilma Northrup has got a lot of both.
Stop it, Henry. Stop it right now, or I'll scream.
Oh, scream all you want. I'll help you, Wilma. Come on out. Wake up. Dinner time. Prison meat. Wake up. Wake up.
Wilma shrieks piercingly, a sound that is probably more rage than fear, and in the aftermath, we hear the whistling sound rising, growing shrill and ugly. Henry kicks her under the stairs. Under the stairs, Wilma falls over on her back, narrowly missing hitting her head. At the same moment, the thing comes out of the crate, an alien furry thing with a body like a whippet, 6 spider-like arms ending in huge claws, with a great head that seems mostly luminous eyes with great gnashing teeth. Wilma begins to scream once more, and the thing lands on her face, squirming and biting and clawing. Although its furry, writhing body mercilessly obscures our view, we can guess what it's doing to her face. Interior of the downstairs hall, Henry is backing away, no longer laughing. From underneath the stairs comes the sound of the thing from the crate, biting and growling and whistling. Henry's face is pallid, his eyes huge.
Just tell it to call you Billy.
Interior Dexter Bradley's bedroom. Bright summer sunshine is streaming in through the window. Dex is in bed, fast asleep, but after a moment his eyes open. He looks around, blankly at first, and then dawning terror as he remembers the previous night. He sits up quickly, then winces as he holds his head. He groans.
Erik?
Dexter, startled, looks around. The camera draws back and we see Henry sitting on the far side of the room, watching Dex calmly.
Henry. Yeah, I got a splinter. Too much booze, I guess. I had a splitter. Splitting headache. Too much booze, I guess. I don't even remember you bringing me home.
I'm afraid it wasn't all booze, Dex.
What?
He breaks off a much stronger as a much stronger consideration occurs to his mind.
Henry, what about the crate? Did you call the police?
The crate's been taken care of. As for your head, I put some of Wilma's sleeping pills in your last drink. I'm sorry, but the effects will pass.
Henry, what are you talking about?
Came back into the house and I switched the note I left Wilma for another one that said you were having some problems with a female graduate student in the basement of Amberson Hall. I knew that was the one thing that would bring her on the run, Dexter. She has a mind like a city sewer main.
Had? Oh, Jesus, Henry, what did you do?
You know damn well what I did. I killed her, Dex. Ding dong, the wicked bitch is dead. I've killed my wife, and now I've put my future in your hands.
The crate. Henry, what have you done with the crate?
That's the beauty of it. You put the final piece in the jigsaw yourself. The crate is at the bottom of Ryder's Quarry.
Exterior parking lot. Henry comes hurrying out of the building and crosses towards the MG in a station wagon. He gets into the wagon and starts it up. Of course, Wilma's keys would have been gone with her purse under the stairs, that is, but most couples keep duplicate sets, so that's no problem.
I don't know much about the zoo department, Dex, but I've been in the English math building for 20 years now, and I thought it could be done. It might be dangerous, but I thought getting rid of Wilma would be worth the risk. For that, I would have risked almost anything.
Exterior station wagon. It crosses to an almost deserted campus and parks in the lot in front of another building. And Henry gets out and hurries towards it.
You see, I knew there was a crate in that basement in the English building. I flashed on that very early in your story, associating one monster with another, I suppose. Last year, when Professor Baldinger was in England on sabbatical, he got his kids a huge stuffed animal that was supposed to look like the Loch Ness monster. It came back in this gigantic wooden crate.
The basement of the English math building. There's a long room containing heating equipment, school supplies such as blue books, notebooks, and old texts neatly stacked against shelves. Over to one side are a lot of janitorial stuff and a huge wooden crate with the words "Shipped from Aldershot to Southampton via lorry" stenciled on the side. Below this, P.O.E. Boston, Massachusetts, USA. The crate is open on top, but it has a hinged lid. Inside, there is a drift of crumpled up papers, trash. Henry enters in a hurry, goes immediately to the crate, and begins to throw papers out onto the floor.
The crate had a hinged top.
Once all the trash paper is out, Henry goes over to the janitorial stuff and wheels a dolly back to the crate. He closes the hinge lid, stands the crate on the dolly, and cinches the straps. He starts to wheel it out, glancing into the janitor's area, sets the dolly back down, and goes back. He sets one of the poles, which the janitor used to open and close the high windows, and then leaves with the dolly, the crate, and the window pole. Exterior parking lot. The station wagon turns in again, this time parking close to the door as possible. Or maybe it parks at a side entrance where there are no steps to cope with. The tailgate is down, and we see a Badlinger's crate, still strapped to the dolly, protruding from the back. Henry parks, gets out, and muscles the dolly out of the wagon. He takes it inside, and during this, he continues to talk.
I didn't meet anyone. At this time of year, and at no other campus is quite... The campus is quite deserted. Summer classes are over, and the fall semester doesn't start for another 2 weeks. The whole thing was almost hellishly perfect. I didn't see so much as a pair of headlights.
The stairs leading to the building. Henry is easing the dolly down the stairs. He also has the window pole. At the bottom, he goes down to the space under the stairs. We see the sweat on his face now. He unstraps the crate and puts it on the floor just outside of the hole open. He puts the window pole beside it and goes back upstairs again. In the lecture hall, Henry goes in and gets the painter's drop cloth from under the scaffold. At the foot of the stairs, he spreads the canvas drop cloth. He puts Badlinger's crate on the drop cloth, still open. Then, sweating heavily now, he takes the window pole and uses it to pull the crate under the stairs out. It's a nasty thing, splintered now, grimed with drying blood. We hear a faint squealing sound as he moves it across the floor. When it's finally all the way out, Henry puts the pole aside, gently. He hesitates, then forcing himself, he bends over and picks the crate up by its two sides and lifts it into the Badlinger's crate. This should take some time, and it should have a tense quality of a bomb diffusing scene in one of those old British films, but from the early 50s. Through all of this, Henry is speaking, his voice low, intense, and rapid.
I used the window pole to hook it out from under the stairs, and then I picked it up and I put it in Badlinger's crate. It was a perfect fit.
You picked it up?
I had to take the chance. I picked it up as if it was full of eggs. No, as if it was full of jars with nitroglycerin in them. It was my first good look at it, remember? You know what made me think of Dex? Those joke boxes they used to sell in novelty shops. You'd push a little lever and the box would grind and shake, and then a pale green hand would come out and push the lever back to stop and then snap inside again. But I got inside Badlinger's crate, Dex. It was sleeping, I think. Why not? It would have been well fed. But when I leaned over to close the top, I saw.
Henry has grasped the hinge top of the Badlinger's crate and is about to close it, close over the crate from under the stairs, when as expression of horrified fascination comes over his face. In the crate, Henry's POV, it's almost totally black inside, but we see Wilma's face. It has a shrunken, shriveled look like a Halloween mask. Her eyes stare up with a blank horror. Then something else moves in the box and we hear a sound, very low, of a whistle. Henry slams the lid of Badlinger's crate shut, blotting it out. In the basement, Henry wraps the tarp around Badlinger's crate, upends it on the foot of the dolly, and cinches it shut. He's working fast now. From inside Badlinger's crate, we hear that whistling and an angry chittering sound, and then silence. Henry tilts the dolly and begins to work his way up the stairs. Exterior, Amberson Hall. Henry comes out, working the crate down the stairs, and rolls it over to the station wagon. He sets it down, and we can see him mentally getting ready for a big lift. He yanks the dolly back up into the back, and with a grunt and a grimace, he shoves it in as far as it'll go, then collapses against the car, panting. A moment or two later, he goes around to the driver's side, gets in, starts up, and drives off. Road in the country, night. The station wagon is moving swiftly along the road, headlights probing the dark.
I drove out to Ryder's Quarry.
An overgrown dirt road. The wagon moves slowly and cautiously up the road. Underbrush scrapes and whips around the sides, and as it passes the camera, we can see Badlinger's crate, still strapped to the dolly, jutting out. Exterior, Ryder's Quarry. This is a sully body of water about 60 feet wide and in the middle of nowhere. The station wagon comes slowly forward to the end of the road, at the dirt road. Turns and heads back towards it until the back wheels are damn near over the edge. We hear the sound of the emergency brake going on, then Henry gets out and comes around to the back. During this business, he speaks.
Nobody swims out there anymore, you know that? Not since that drunken frat party 2 years ago when that double drowning happened. Christ. Nobody even knows how deep it is. Deep enough, though. I hope.
He hesitates, seizes the box, lets go, and grabs it again. It comes out slowly. He's working from the side, and that makes it awkward.
I couldn't even bring myself to grab that thing at first, Dex. In a very real way, it was 3 bodies. The remains of 3 human beings. Well, 2 human beings and Wilma. and I started to wonder, where did they go? I saw Wilma's face, but it looked all flat, like a Halloween mask. How much of them did it eat, Dex? How could it eat? It was still whistling. I could hear it, muffled and faint. I think maybe, at the very end, it suspected what was happening.
You hear that whistling sound just as the dolly begins to tilt out and down. The thing inside begins to growl and yammer. Then the thing splashes into the water. There are ripples and bubbles, and then the surface of the quarry is still again. Henry Northup leans against the side of the wagon, head back, eyes closed, chest heaving. Interior Dex Bradley's living room. The two of them were sitting there, drinking coffee.
You came back here?
Well, first I went up to Amberson Hall and I cleaned under the stairs. There was a lot of stuff from Wilma's purse there. The janitor's key ring, some change. I think I cleaned up everything. I drove over here, relieved you of your car keys, and then I drove back to my house and parked the station wagon just where Wilma always parks it. Then I drove your car over here and put in your garage. It's been a long night.
Henry, what if I'd wake up before you got back here and called the police?
You didn't.
There's a moment of silence.
The question is, what happens now? 3 people are going to be reported missing quite soon. The only element that connects all 3 is the university, and that's a tenuous connection at best. There are no signs of foul play, and I saw to that. There's really no bodies. Are there, Dex?
No, I suppose there aren't.
What about you, Dex? What are you going to say?
Nothing.
Thank you. Thank you, Dex.
No need to thank me, Henry, just as long as you understand that I expect to whip your ass at chess twice a week for the rest of our lives.
well, we'll see about that, won't we?
The two of them smile at each other for a moment.
Here's one loose end, Dex.
What's that?
It's small, and I almost hesitate to mention it. For you, I think it would mean crossing the line between bystander and accessory.
Come on, Henry, don't waltz.
Well, it's my MG. It's still in that Amberson parking lot. I was wondering if you'd run over there in your car to pick it up.
There's a pause. Then a slow smile covers Dex's face.
Henry, what are friends for?
Exterior Amberson parking lot. The door to Henry's MG swings shut and Henry starts it up. Dex is standing next to it, in the background of his car, idling. Henry looks out.
Okay, Dex.
There's only one thing that bothers me.
What?
What if it gets out, Henry? What if it gets out?
If you could have seen the way I wrapped it up.
Exterior Ryder's quarry. A litter of boards are floating to the surface of the quarry. The camera moves in on one of these. We can see blood stains, and on the side, stenciled, Paella.
You wouldn't worry, Dex. That thing is drowned in its box 70 feet down. So relax.
The camera moves up to the far side of the quarry. This side is heavily screened with thick bushes. Suddenly, they begin to shake, and from behind them we hear that ugly, savage yammering sound. Then silence. Then a whistling sound like a tea kettle that has just reached a rolling boil. Freeze frame. As previous, the freeze frame continues into a comic book picture, this one taking up the full page. At the bottom of the comic panel are 2 words in boldface type. The end? The sounds of a storm come up louder than before, and the gust of wind blows the Creepshow comic out of a trash can. A gutter on the main street. The Creepshow comic lands cover upwards near the gutter, but not in it. That would wreck it, because the gutter is full of rushing water that is swirling down a nearby storm grating. Thunder and lightning. The wind flips the comic open, riffling the pages swiftly, giving us a kaleidoscope view of 3 stories we've had so far. It falls open to a new story, and the camera moves into the splash page. We see a man's head, apparently sitting in the sand of a beach. To the left of the shadow is a man sitting. In the background is the ocean. The face of this apparently disembodied head is one of extreme terror. The eyes are turned up, apparently, to the man who is cast in the shadow. The title of this story is Something to Tide You Over. The printed matter fades out. The comic picture becomes a freeze frame, and as it begins to move. So, on the desert beach.
Please, Richard, you can't do this. Don't do anything you'll regret later.
The disembodied head is speaking, and now we realize it's not really a disembodied head at all. Harry is buried in the soft beach sand all the way up to his chin. Sounds in the background, gulls crying and the constant beat of the surf on the shore. The shadow moves slightly.
Like you did?
Richard, you must understand. We were in love. We are in love.
Love? You were fucking each other. There's a big difference, Harry. And that was my wife you were fucking. A big mistake.
Don't hurt her, please. Richard, don't hurt her.
The shadow begins to move away.
Where are you going? Don't leave me like this.
Oh, I'll be back before the tide comes in. There's something I want to show you. I'll only be 10 minutes or so. It'll give you time, Harry. Time to think about how you got yourself into this mess to start with.
During the last sentence, Vickers' voice is getting fainter. We hear the sound of sand under his shoes as he moves away.
Richard, come back. Don't leave me here.
The mocking laugh is from Richard Vickers.
Richard, for Christ's sake.
No answer. The footsteps merely fade away. The camera moves in on Harry, who is in mortal terror. His eyes move towards the sea. At the beach, from Harry's POV, the tide is coming in, wave upon wave, but it's still a fair distance away. The beach is totally deserted. About halfway up from where the waves are expanding the last of their force, we can see a child's blue plastic pail abandoned. He is still terrified, but he might be struggling to get out of the sand, although it's hard to tell with only his head showing. If he is, he soon gives it up as a bad job. For a moment, he closes his eyes and then opens them again. A certain hopelessness has come into his face. We hear the sound of the surf, magnified as the camera moves in on Harry in extreme close-up. His terror and hopelessness are clearly drawn on his face. They are clear as the granules of sand on one cheek. The voice of Richard begins to repeat over and over again.
Time to think about how you got yourself into this mess to start with. Time to think about how you got yourself into this mess to start with. Time to...
Now we go into a flashback, handled however this seems most comfortable for the director. In Harry's living room, the room is deserted, but it's a very nice room. A member of the UMC lives here. That's upper middle class, not U.S. Marine Corps. You don't buy furniture like this. The casual Navajo throw rug, the shite sling chairs, the RCA Select Division system, the Cleon one wall for under $100,000 a year. The doorbell rings. It rings several times, in fact, and the visitor, apparently growing impatient, begins to hammer on the door.
All right.
The pounding, hammering actually, continues a bit, but falls silent as Harry comes out of his bedroom, belting his robe around his waist. He is quite obviously half asleep. Why not? It's no more than 5 a.m. He goes to the door, but it doesn't open.
Who is it?
Richard Vickers.
Harry pauses, obviously surprised and nonplussed. At last.
I don't know any.
You know who I am, Wentworth. Let's not play games.
Harry's face doesn't register guilt, but a kind of unhappy resignation and a bit of caution. Harry is about 35, good looking. His face is pleasant and open. The door is on a chain, and as he opens it just far as the chain will allow. In the crack, we get our first look at Richard Vickers. He is perhaps 10 years older than Harry, dark saturnine. We get no feelings of warmth or openness from Richard.
Who are you and what do you want?
Oh, I think you know who I am. You've been fucking my wife for almost 8 months now. Mean she doesn't talk about her big shot producer husband? 3 TV shows, 1 on each network, all in the top 15? I'd call her an ungrateful bitch, but I suppose I've known that all along.
Harry attempts to slam the door shut. Richard sticks his foot in it.
You don't want to do that, mister. Maybe it works on TV, but I can bench press 300 pounds. You get your foot out of my door, you're going to lose half of it.
Oh, you could do it. I have no doubt. But you won't.
Why not?
Because if you do, something nasty is going to happen to Rebecca. Something so unbelievably nasty that your little corporate mind couldn't begin to conceive it.
Now we see uncertainty in Harry's face for the first time. Richard sees it too, and he begins to grin. It's not a particularly pleasant grin.
Believe me, Harry, you want to talk to me.
After a slight pause.
We'll have to get your goddamn foot out of the door so I can let off the chain.
Richard takes his foot out. Harry closes the door, and after the minutest of hesitations, unhooks the chain, opens the door, and steps back warily. He's obviously ready for a fight if the situation seems to indicate that. Richard steps in, smiling, looking perfectly at home. He's a bit dandified in dark, close-fitting pants, a white shirt of coarse weave, and an ascot. He closes the door behind him.
What's this about Becky?
Ah, Becky. So you do know her.
You know I do.
In the biblical sense?
Look, it's 5:05 in the morning. I don't want to play games. You found out. All right. We were going to tell you very soon anyway.
Sure, right. Yes, I just bet.
It's the truth, whether you like it or not. You ought to be grateful, friend. If you ever loved her, and Becky says you never did, you certainly don't now. There'll be no alimony, none of that communal property shit. She just wants out.
Through all of the foregoing, Richard has maintained a certain brittle, dangerous charm. Now it begins to crack the tiniest bit.
I don't know if I ever loved her or not, Harry. May I call you Harry? Good. But that doesn't matter, not in the slightest. You see, what's mine, I keep. Nobody takes it away from me. I made her a fucking star, for Christ's sake. You think I'm gonna let her walk out like with a jumped up bank loan officer?
The two of them have moved towards the center of Harry's apartment. Outside the window, we can see the ocean at some distance.
I'm still not clear on what you want.
I want you to come with me. I have a beach place not far from here. 200 acres of beachfront. Want to discuss this on my own turf.
November's a little cold for swimming, especially in Massachusetts. What's this about Becky?
Richard takes a pocket cassette recorder and player out of his pocket. One of those small ones is about the size of a cigarette pack. He pushes the play button and puts it on the coffee table. The camera moves in until we can see the sprockets turning. When Becky speaks from the machine, her voice is panicky, but oddly broken by pauses.
Harry, he's got me in. Come. You have to come or the. Please, Harry, please. Come. He's crazy. Oh, dear God. Richard, please. Please don't.
A long, shrill scream comes from the tape player. Then silence. In Richard's apartment, Harry is white-faced and terrified. Richard is smug, grinning.
What have you done with her? What?
He's unable to contain himself. He leaps at Richard, knocking him backwards, first over a coffee table, which overturns, then onto the sofa. Harry's hands find Richard's neck.
Oh, help me Christ, I'll choke it out of you.
Choke me? And she'll die for sure.
Little by little, Harry lets go. Richard sits up and goes through a fussy series of readjustments to himself, finishing by straightening his ascot. In spite of the attempted choking, he seems rather pleased.
That was naughty, Wentworth. Very naughty. Look at that coffee table.
He points. Harry doesn't look.
I could have hit my head on the corner of that and died. That always happens in the old Alfred Hitchcock TV shows.
That would have been fine by me.
Then you would never know where Becky is, would you? And believe me, Wentworth, you want to know. Because at 11 o'clock this morning, just about 5 hours and 45 minutes from now, it's going to be too late.
Harry stares at him for a moment, then gets up and goes to the telephone. He begins to dial.
Who are you calling?
Who do you think, you fucking crazy man? I'm calling the police.
Do that and she'll die, Wentworth. That I promise you.
Harry hesitates, looks at Richard. Richard takes out a cigarette case and opens it.
We'll work this out between us, or it won't be worked out. Understand it and believe it.
Where is she?
Cigarette?
Exterior, country road on the coast. A black sports car, Fiat, MG, maybe a Mercedes, comes towards camera. It blips by and the camera turns to track it. In the foreground, we see a sign which reads Comfort Point, 6 miles. The road is lonely, bordered on both sides by dunes and sawgrass. At the sound of the motor fades, we can hear the surf. In the car, Richard is behind the wheel, driving with what he probably imagines is Continental Elan. Harry beside him in jeans and a blue work shirt. They pass over a bridge. Beneath is slick with mud and kelp.
Rotten smell when the tide's out, isn't it? Smells like dead fish or something.
You know, I just don't understand what you're trying to prove by this.
I'm not trying to prove a damn thing, Harry, my boy. You said earlier that I'm not sane. Accept that. On certain subjects, most particularly on what is mine, I'm not sane at all. At least I'm going to give you a chance to rescue the maiden fair.
Where is she?
Where is she? Where is she? You sound like a broken record. She's where she's safe. And you'll see her. I promise. Here we are.
It turns into a long drive, sandy ruts and high sawgrass in the middle, a lonely spot. Exterior beach shack. The car pulls up in front of this, lonelier and lonelier. The car and the shack are the only human artifacts we can see. Beyond the shack is a long, long beach, powdery white sand with a high tide line of twisted kelp. And then a long, slick brown stretch down to the upcoming waves. Richard gets out of the car, fingering through the keys on his ring. Harry gets out more slowly. Richard pauses to point off to the left, like a tour guide.
My summer house is up that way. You can't quite see it from here. Comfort house is what I call it. Amusingly vulgar, don't you think?
Becky in there?
Nothing in here but some tools and equipment. Small portable generator and my windbreaker. Patience, my dear boy.
He finds the right key, opens the door, and ducks inside. A moment later, he returns with the windbreaker tossed casually over one shoulder. He points towards the beach with his free hand.
Down this way.
I don't see anything down there at the beach.
You will. Come on.
Aren't you going to lock the shed?
No need. Come on. The maiden fair awaits.
They begin to walk away. The camera goes through the open shed door and looks around. We see the generator he has mentioned, a litter of tools, and most surprisingly of all, perhaps, a lot of TV equipment. A color camera with lots of flex cable, a video cassette recorder, and a small TV set. On the beach... Okay, it says on the beach, no pun intended. Richard and Harry are walking through the sand. Sounds of wind and waves are quite low now. The wind ruffles through their hair. Ahead, we see a large pile of beach sand and a shovel driven into it. This is what they are walking towards.
I once figured out that I own almost 70% of Comfort Point, Harry. Isn't that amazing?
What's that pile of sand? Is it
a burial mound of the Lady Fair? Nothing so satisfyingly Republic cereal, I'm afraid. But you will be interested in it, I think. Take a look.
Harry approaches it anxiously. Richard now lags slightly behind. Beyond a pile of beach sand and the hole, we can see the discarded blue plastic beach pail. Harry looks down at the hole. From the hole, Harry's perspective, it's about 5 feet deep. There is something nasty and ominous about it. The sides ooze moisture, and there's a puddle of water at the bottom.
Notice the water, Harry? Even with the tide out, water creeps in. The smallest child with his first sand pail notices that. How the water oozes into that hole, even when the tide is out.
On the beach with Harry, he looks up from the hole and turns to face Richard.
all right? You've had your fun. Now where?
He stops abruptly. The camera pulls back. Richard is pointing a pistol at him. He undoubtedly picked it up in the equipment shed and had it concealed under the windbreaker.
I think this has gone just about far enough.
Not nearly far enough, Harry, my boy. Let me assure you.
Harry begins to tense, his hands curled into fists.
I can see you getting ready to jump me, Harry, just like the hero in a Saturday matinee. You might even manage to overpower me. I'd put the odds at about 1 in 25. But before you try playing Randolph Scott or Audie Murphy, I suggest you consider your beloved Rebecca.
You can see the uncertainty on Harry's face again. He simply doesn't know what to do.
It's perfect, you know, a perfect box, and you're in it. If you leap at me, I'm going to shoot you, and there will be absolutely no one to rescue the Lady Fair. If you should hit that one lucky chance, bingo, give that man a turkey. I will still not let you know tell you where Becky is. You see the box, Harry. You do, don't you? Poor Harry.
What do you want me to do?
All in good time. I thought Becky would bring you this far, and she did. But there comes a point where love and all that perfumed rot about maidens fair and knights on horseback gives way to the putrid scent of self-interest. That's why I brought the persuader. Now be a good boy and get into the hole, Harry.
Harry looks into the hole and then back at Richard. For the first time, he looks really afraid.
No.
Richard cocks the pistol.
Yes.
No.
All right. I'm shooting you now.
He levels the pistol.
Sorry.
Harry jumps quickly into the hole. There's a squashy splashing sound as his feet hit the water. Richard laughs delightedly. At the risk of belaboring the point that may be obvious, something is happening to Harry. He's losing the commanding air he had earlier. This is no John Wayne hero, but a real man. And where earlier he had only been Richard's physical prisoner, now he is becoming a psychological prisoner as well. There is something relentlessly terrible and nightmarish about all of this.
What now, Vickers?
Make it Richard. So much more friendly.
All right, Richard, what now?
You can just reach the sand from where you are, so start pulling it into the hole.
No way.
I have no intention of burying you alive, dear Harry. None whatsoever. I intend to incapacitate you, that's all. And then you can see Becky. I promise you that.
I don't believe you.
No, but I never break my promises.
I still don't believe you.
But I have the gun, don't I?
Help! Help! Help!
As they also used to say in the old Alfred Hitchcock TV programs, scream all you want. There's no one to hear you. How life imitates art. Now, start pulling that sand into the hole, or I'll put a hole in your head.
Richard raises the gun again. Harry looks up at him helplessly, then begins to pull the sand into the hole. Exterior, the surf. Well, maybe not exactly surf. Waves. They are starting to come in. The tide is on the turn. It has begun to move up the beach. Back with Harry and Richard, Harry is standing in the hole. He's in the sand to just above his knees. He's pulling more sand in, but slowly. Every now and then he glances at the water. The fact that the hole he is standing in is well below the high tide is not lost on him. Or us. Richard stands back out of reach with the gun.
Now stop.
Harry stops immediately and looks up at Richard, questioning.
Put your hands at your sides, as if you were standing at attention on a parade ground.
Now wait just a minute.
Richard begins to raise the gun again. Harry quickly puts his hands at his sides. Richard begins to push sand into the hole with the side of his foot. Flop, flop, flop. Harry's fingers start to disappear into the sand. He pulls them up.
Enough, goddammit, enough!
Now listen to me, Harry. I believe we've gotten to know each other this morning. I believe we're well on our way to becoming good friends. But I tell you this for the absolutely final time. Put your arms against your sides or I'm going to blow your head off. That is irrevocable. Let me strongly suggest that you exercise wisdom in this matter and decide to live a little longer. After all, where there's life, there's hope. Up to you now. My patience is at an end.
After a moment, a brief moment, Harry puts his arms to his sides again. Richard begins putting sand into the hole again. He walks around Harry in a deliberate, almost ritualistic circle, filling in the hole with sand. Harry's fingers disappear, his hands, his wrists, his forearms. The sand is thigh deep, then waist deep, then stomach deep. Harry's arms are now buried up to the elbows.
Richard,
What is it, Harry?
please,
I'm sorry?
please.
Couldn't quite hear you. Tide's coming in, you know. Waves are getting loud.
Please, for the love of God, don't. Not over my chest. I won't be able to breathe. The sand's heavy.
I'm sure it is. Very heavy. But you'll be able to breathe, with some difficulty, of course. But you'll be able to breathe.
Richard begins footing sand into the hole again. Flop, flop, flop. Exterior, the water. Wavelets running up and down the beach, the sound of crying gulls and the relentless sound of crashing waves. The camera draws back and we see about 500 feet from the wave's furthest current, a scene very similar to where we open the story. Harry is buried right up to his chin, a claustrophobe's nightmare. Richard is on his hands and knees, patting the sand down firmly around his chin and jawline. The gun lies on the firm sand some few feet away. It's no longer necessary. Harry is broken. His eyes roll in utter mad terror.
Richard, please, I can't get my breath.
I know it's hard, isn't it? Like being buried in wet cement. But what's worse is that you can't move your arms away from your sides, can you? There's no leverage. All that sand pressing in on you, and you can't move at all. Try, Harry. Try to move.
We see Harry's face contort with effort. He strains. Nothing.
Let me out, Richard. I'll go away if that's what you want, only don't hurt her.
Richard picks up a handful of sand and trickles it down onto Harry's head. Harry closes his eyes. Sand sticks to his face, itching, maddening. Nothing he can do about it.
I could just cover you up all the way, couldn't I, dear Harry?
He begins to move more sand now, covering Harry's mouth. It's almost up to his nostrils.
Oh, that would be nasty, wouldn't it?
Abruptly, he pulls the sand away from Harry's mouth.
Except that I promised I wouldn't. Whether you believed it or not, I always keep my promises. To the letter. You want to see something amusing?
Harry's eyes roll in terror. He sneezes out sand. Richard picks up the gun and rolls the cylinder out. He spins it. All 6 chambers are empty.
I bluffed you, Harry.
He stands up, and now the scene is just as it was in the opening, complete to the shadow.
Where are you going? Don't leave me like this.
Oh, I'll be back before the tide comes in.
We flash forward into the present, Richard's last words, before the tide comes in, echoing over and over, and we dissolve to the incoming tide. It's almost reached the blue plastic sand bucket. In fact, as we watch it, one of the expiring wavelets actually touches it. Exterior, Harry. He is struggling to get out, fruitlessly. He gives it up and closes his eyes. Just then, a gull flutters down nearby. Harry opens his eyes again at the sound.
Get out of here.
The gull flutters its wings a little at the sound of his voice, but that's all. It seems to know he's helpless. It struts towards him. Its beak seems very sharp, and Harry's face registers fear.
Go on, get out.
The gull comes closer. Abruptly, it slashes at Harry's cheek, leaving a thin smear of blood.
Get the fuck out of here.
The bird flies off with a startled squawk. Harry's head, all of him that we can see, sags back for a moment. Then he looks at the waves with fresh terror. Now we hear the sound of an approaching footstep, though, or through the sand. A voice, Richard's, singing Camptown Races. Harry looks around and registers some surprise.
You'll see. Fear not, dear boy.
Richard enters the frame. He's rolling a drum of electrical cables on the sand. 2 cables, actually, side by side. One of them ends near where Harry is buried at the chin deep. There is an alligator clip connector on the end of it. Harry continues on, unrolling the other cable, and we might recognize it's a standard coax cable, the sort people use for their video systems.
Listen, Richard, you've made your point. I'm scared. I admit it. If you'll only...
Patience, dear boy. Have patience. High tide at 12:14 this afternoon, and it's almost 9 now, I suspect. The tide will be up to you by 11:30 or so, 11:45 at the latest. So don't slow me down.
Richard!
But Richard goes on, unreeling the electrical cable and singing Camptown Races. Harry looks after him desperately. On the incoming tide, the waves are crashing regularly over the blue pale now. As we look, one of them frees it from the sand and it goes floating away. The camera pans up to Harry, but it's not a very long pan either. The tide is getting close. Harry looks from the small waves running up to the beach and then turns to look at something else, the electrical cable. The eye of a camera follows it, black to the white of the beach sand. It goes about 600 feet down the beach to another jutting point of land out of sight. At the beach, featuring a crab, nasty thing, scuttling along. The camera follows it, and then Harry is in the frame, looking at the crab with real horror.
God, get out of here.
Crab scuttles closer. Harry shouts at it. The crab pauses and then comes on. Like the gull, it appears to sense his helplessness. It does not try to bite him or tear off a chunk with its claws, but after a moment it begins to crawl at him, up the back of his neck and into his hair. Harry begins to scream. A shadow falls over him. Richard leans down and picks the crab out of Harry's hair and tosses it away.
It's just getting revenge for all the times you sat down to a plate of baked stuffed crab at 21, dear boy.
Harry's nerve is entirely shot now. Indeed, it would not be too much to say that whatever remains of his sanity is held together by only 1 or 2 fraying cords. He babbles at Richard with no sense of dignity or restraint.
Please, Richard, anything. I'll go away. I'll stay away. Money. I have money. If only you'll just let me out of this hole, Richard. For the love of Christ, let me out. The tide is...
Yes, the tide is coming in rather fast now, isn't it? We'll have to hurry.
Quite suddenly, he plonks a small portable TV down in the sand right in front of Harry's eyes, not more than 6 inches from his nose, in fact. It's one of those cheap Japanese jobs, battery-powered.
It's showtime!
Richard, please.
The expiring wavelets are now no more than 20 feet from where Harry is buried up to his chin. His eyes bulge and roll between them and Richard. Richard is now attaching the cord of the alligator clip to the back of the TV. This done, he squats to one side, looking at Harry.
As someone who works in TV, I have access to all this stuff first. Some of it is truly amazing. State of the art, they call it.
Let me out! Let me out! Let me...
Richard puts a finger to Harry's lips.
Perhaps, oops. Perhaps you will get out, Harry. I rather doubt it. But there is at least an outside chance. But you'll have to be quiet. You have to listen closely. Because the tide is very close now. And I'll only have a chance to say this once. You understand?
Harry goes quiet. His eyes, large, tear-stained, and utterly mad, are fixed on Richard's.
The main cable goes back that way to the equipment shed you saw earlier, where it's hooked into a video deck. Another cable goes overland from beyond that point to the same place. The overland cable is hooked into a Sony color camera. All to bring you this, my dear boy.
Richard turns on the TV. Exterior on the TV screen, a picture comes up, picture and sound. We are looking at a woman's head, Becky's head. It also seems to rest, disembodied on the sand, because she has also been buried up to her chin. Her long dark hair draggles behind her. It's wet because the tide is already sending small waves around her. She has to tilt her head to keep her nose above them. She is screaming. On the beach with Richard and Harry.
Becky, oh, dear God, Becky.
I'm sorry, she can't see you or hear you. I could have worked that out, I suppose, with a little more time, but I didn't have it. You see, that the tide has already reached her, as it will reach you in another 5 or 10 minutes.
Tinny screams from the TV monitor as waves continue to rise around Becky. A particularly large one covers her up for a moment, and then she's revealed again, sputtering and shrieking. Richard turns the volume down.
I promised you'd see her again, Harry, and I always keep my promises.
You bastard, 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 bastard.
Richard speaks now as it's with none of the previous light mockery. He is utterly serious and utterly mad.
You might be able to get out, Harry. Yes, a remote possibility, but a real one. The tide itself might free you the way it freed that blue sand bucket. If you can keep calm, if you can keep from screaming when the water covers you so cold, so salty, as you wait for it to go out so you can take one quick breath before the next wave comes in. Yes, there's a chance if you keep your head. I believe she's lost hers, don't you?
He turns the sound up on the TV again. Becky is screaming in half-choked gasps, snorting water, twisting her head wildly. A particularly large wave comes crashing in and covers her entirely. When it retreats, her head only lolls limply, her hair flowing around like seaweed.
Feel how hard your heart is beating, Harry? How fast? It makes it hard to hold your breath, doesn't it?
He stands, looks at his watch, and the first wave creeps up to Harry, not quite touching him, but dampening the sand in front of him. Harry recoils in horror.
My, how late it's getting. I must trot, Harry. Enjoy the show.
He starts away.
No, come back, don't leave me here. Come back.
No, I really can't stay. But if you do happen to get free, Harry, come and see me. But don't count on the gun being unloaded a second time, will you?
Richard walks away up the beach. Harry begins to scream for him to come back as the waves roll up to his mouth, causing him to sputter and choke. He faces into the waves, and another one surfs over his mouth and around his cheeks and ears, then withdraws. On the TV, we can't even see Becky anymore, only swirling black hair on the top of the restless water. A fresh wave comes in, rolling around on the TV as it shorts out with a long, buzzing, snapping sound. Harry and the tide. Exactly how this is shot would be entirely a directorial matter. For perhaps as long as a full minute to the audience, hopefully it'll seem longer, we watch Harry deal with the oncoming tide. We see his head buried under the oncoming waves. We see him emerge again and struggling to free himself. Perhaps we even have some underwater stuff. Harry with his hair waving, his eyes open, bubbles coming from his mouth. The bubbly underwater sounds have Harry screaming. The audience should live his struggle to survive on the edge of their collective seats. The harsh tearing sounds of his breaths as the waves recede, the back tilt of his head, and the final gulp of the fresh wave, always bigger as it comes in. We last see him underwater, still imprisoned in his hole, eyes bulging madly into camera, cheeks puff out. With the issue still in doubt, we cut to underwater at the beach. We see the portable TV rolling slowly along what was the beach and what will be for the next 6 hours or so, the ocean floor. Beneath it, trailing out lazily and rather beautifully, is the coax cable. At the beach, a long shot. From this angle, we can see all of Comfort Point, the waves rolling onto the beach one after another. We hear the sound of the breakers. Dissolve to the beach again. This time, the tide is going out, the sunset colorfully reflected in the slick mud near the water. We hear someone, Richard, approaching, whistling Camptown races. The swishing sound of his feet on the sand, the steady chunk-chunk sound of something being dug into the sand at irregular intervals. Richard enters the frame. He's changed into a black and red strappy t-shirt and clam diggers. He has a shovel in one hand. He walks for a bit, then pauses and looks around, sees something and starts toward it. Further down the beach, the corner of something is poking out of the wet sand, just the corner. Richard reaches it and uses the shovel to excavate it. It's the portable TV. He sets it on the sand as it rises to his feet and begins to cast carefully out, looking for Harry's remains. From Richard's POV, he walks around looking for some sign of Harry. His smug expression of expectation gradually changed to perplexity, and perplexity to a qualified unease. There is simply nothing. At last, he comes back to the portable TV and looks out towards the dark ocean.
Current pulled him out. Pulled them both out.
Still, he looks uneasy. After a bit, he begins to walk back the way he came, taking the TV with him. The camera moves to the ocean and holds there, the waves coming in with the darkness, the tide on the turn again. At the Comfort House, we see it silhouetted against the night sky, but not much more. It's a tall, angular house, hideously Victorian, with gables and gambrels and turrets, maybe even a cupola. Any resemblance to Norman Bates' Psycho House is purely intentional. In the background, we hear the sound of waves. Upstairs, a single light goes on. In the bedroom, this is the room of a pure hedonist or of a man who spent too much time reading the living section of Playboy magazine as a kid. White rug, thick enough to breaststroke through, a mural vision TV on the wall, waterbed, Art Deco lights, etc. Richard is standing back to the camera, looking into the night, the ocean, we presume. He's unbuttoning his shirt. He turns away from the window, takes his shirt off, and drops it casually into a basket chair suspended from a chain. But his face isn't casual. His unease is slightly more evident now.
The undertow took them. Good riddance. Get off it. Get off it, why don't you?
He starts for the bathroom. There's a faint sound. We don't know that, but Richard hears it too. He stops, cocks his head, and then goes on again. He turns to the bathroom for lessons and closes the door. At the front steps of the Comfort House, the sound of the incoming tide is louder. Although it's dark, we can see wet shoe prints on the steps leading up to the porch, shoe prints and something else, a few strands of kelp and seaweed. The camera pans slowly up to the porch, more tracks, and we hear slow footsteps on the boards. In the bathroom, the camera takes a slow look around. Here are Richard's shoes and socks, here are his clam diggers, his underwear shorts, shaving stuff is set out on the basin. The sound of the shower drumming loudly, and Richard is singing Camptown Races again. In front of the hall of Comfort House, the camera moves slowly to the front door. The knob turns clockwise. There's a click. The door begins to swing open, and there's a faint squeal of the hinges. In the shower, Richard is well lathered up, singing away. Despite the sounds of the shower and his singing, we can hear the sound of the squeaking hinges, faint but audible. Richard hears it too. He stops singing, and the unease fills his face. No fear. Now it's fear. He reaches out and shuts off the water. No sound now but water dripping from him, and faintly the crash of the waves coming in. He listens for some time, then throws open the door to the shower stall and gets out. Maybe we expected something horrible to be there waiting for him, but there's nothing. He grabs his robe off of the back of the door, pulls it on, and opens the door to the bedroom. He starts across, gets halfway, and stops again. The fear on his face is acute now. We hear a new sound, creaking treads. Someone or something is slowly mounting the stairs.
Who's there?
The sounds cease. They're silent except for the faint beat of the surf. Richard stands, indecisive and terrified. On the stairs, the camera pans slowly up them. More wet shoe tracks, kelp and seaweed. The camera reaches the feet, and we see them for just a second before they move on. Time enough to register that there are two pairs of them, a man's in wet loafers clotted with sand and seaweed, and a woman's low-heeled sandals also wet and dirty. Then they move on. The sound of creaking floorboard resumes. In the bedroom, Richard is pawing open the drawer of the night table, now in terror. He pulls the gun out we saw earlier and a box of cartridges. He sits on the bed and loads it fumblingly, alternating glances at the cylinder with the glances at the bedroom door. The sound of creaking boards are getting louder. They're coming in his direction. With the gun loaded, he stands up.
Is that you, Wentworth?
The creaking sounds continue.
I've got the gun, and it's loaded this time, dear boy. Believe it. Just you simply leave the way you came.
He breaks off, eyes widening. The doorknob of the room is now turning. Slowly. Slowly.
Don't come in here. It's loaded. I'll shoot you. I warn you, Wentworth. I'll shoot you dead.
The knob has reached full cock. There's a long pause, and the door opens slowly. Richard screams. Well, he might. Standing in the doorway are Harry and Becky. They are ghastly, livid white. Their clothes are wet and dripping, and there's seaweed and kelp on both of them, on their clothes and their hair. Becky stares at Richard with a kind of hideous, drugged avidity. So does Harry, but with only one of his eyes. The other is a blank socket. Lunch for the crabs, perhaps. They begin to shuffle forward, leaving water and seaweed behind. They squelch as they walk.
You can't shoot us dead, Richard, because we're already dead.
Already dead. Yes, already dead.
Richard begins to scream, and he screams through the rest of the scene. He begins to fire the pistol, and we can see the bullets going home, but the bullets don't stop the advancing Harry and Becky. He begins to back away towards the bathroom, still shooting. There comes the inevitable moment, however, when the sound of the bullets comes the dry click, click, click of an empty gun. He throws it at Becky, and it strikes her in the face. There's no blood, however, only a terrible, livid gash. They are quite close to him now. Harry gropes for him. Screaming, Harry darts into the bathroom and slams the door. The bathroom. Richard slams the door. Harry reaches through. There's a crunching sound, then Harry's hand is severed. It drops to the tile floor. Richard turns and bolts and retreats, mad with terror, until his back is against the washstand. The doorknob begins to turn back and forth. Harry and Becky begin to pound on the door. Outside of the bathroom door, we are close up on Becky. She is pounding steadily on the door. Close up, she looks simply dreadful, with her hair plastered against her face. She's already begun to molder.
Let us in, Richard. Let us in, Richard. Let us in, Richard.
In the bathroom, below the pounding, a subtle scratching sound. Richard looks down and screams again. The severed hand, discolored, wet, clotted with sand, has begun to crawl across the floor towards Richard. His foot comes down on it again, splintering it, smashing it. At last, it lies still. It looks like a huge, grotesque spider that's been squashed. In the bathroom with Richard, he is insane with terror. He kicks the squashed hand away. In the bedroom, we see Becky is at the bathroom door alone, pounding. But a moment later, Harry re-enters the bedroom from the hall. He has found a large axe somewhere. Becky stands aside. Harry moves slowly towards the locked bathroom door.
Want to see you, Richard.
Yes, we want to see you, Richard.
We dug a hole for you, Richard.
Yes, on the beach, below the tide line.
We come, Richard.
He raises the axe and swings it. It splinters its way through the door. Interior of the bathroom. The axe is withdrawn, but a moment later it comes down again, widening the hole. We can see them outside now, and so can Richard, who is in his last extremity of horror. He wheels in the medicine cabinet abruptly and claws it open. He claws through the stuff and finds a safety razor. He unscrews it and removes the blade. He holds it, glances wildly at the disintegrating door again, and then down. The mangled hand is beginning to twitch and move again. For Richard, that decides it. Even as Becky reaches through the door, groping for the lock, he smashes the razor blade across his throat, and the blood begins to gush as red scream. This total red dissolves slowly to the ocean. It's moving gently, a path of silver beaten across the moonlight. We hear the gentle, almost sulphuric sound of breaking waves. At the beach, the scene is lit by the eerily still glow of the moonlight. We see Richard buried up to his shoulders in beach sand. His head lolls bonelessly backwards, revealing a deep clotted slit in his neck. His eyes are open and glazed, full of moonlight. The camera holds this for a moment and then very slowly moves towards the water. Leading away from the place where Richard's body has been is the place where a double line of footprints. They go down to the beach where they are lost in the wavelets of the oncoming tide. Freeze frame. The freeze frame becomes a comic book picture. As before, the sounds of the rain and faint thunder come up, and a few droplets of rain splatter down to the open Creepshow comic. We can hear the sound of water rushing down the gutter and swirling to the storm drain. The pages flutter and turn over. The left is full of full-page Artist of the Month feature, such as the old comics used to run. And this is where we see the smiling, bearded face of George Romero, along with a lot of copy which we will not have the time to read. To the right of the letter to the editor-in-chief, under the Creepshow logo, of course, we see the letters about Martin, about Salem's Lot, about Night of the Living Dead, possibly other things as well. All of them rather fawning and superficial, as letters of old comics and magazines so frequently tended to be. Before we can see much, the wind flutters the page over as well. Continued. Now we're on what's left the last full-page ad for a mail-order Venus flytrap bulb. Learn more of nature's wonderful secrets. Feed it hamburger and live bugs. On the right-hand side, we see a splash page for the fifth and final story of the cycle. The camera moves in and we see a comic picture of an elderly man in a nice bathrobe crouching in the corner of a rich-looking living room. Prominent in the foreground is a touch-tone telephone on the desk littered with papers. Behind him and into the night is a large pictured window, giving the view of New York City at night. The elderly man, Upson Pratt, is an aerosol can in one hand with a white cloud of spray is issuing from it. The elderly party's expression is grim and almost point of viciousness. The title of the story is They're Creeping Up on You. The sounds of the storm fade out, and the printed matter fades out. The comic drawing becomes a freeze frame, which comes to life. We hear a hissing sound of an aerosol can and see the white stuff rise. Pratt rises to his feet with an ugly but satisfied grunt. The telephone rings, and he crosses to it and picks it up. He speaks with an ugly, hectoring bark, Pratt's usual tone of voice. He is of the peculiar genius to which public myth has assured us, not to mention the works of Harold Robbins, the monstrous millionaire, possibly billionaire.
Hello, Super?
No, Mr. Pratt, it's George Gendron.
I called the Super. Damn fools downstairs told me he was on vacation. I told them I want a call from him within the hour, whether he's on vacation or not. Within the hour. He has 26 minutes to go, or he can stay on vacation permanently. I own the damn building, which means I own him. Never forget that, George.
No, sir.
What the hell are you doing in the office at 9:30, George? No overtime at the executive level, you know.
He cackles. Sorry. Pratt looks around his lovely apartment, and there is a harried, phobic.
It's only 6:30 on the West Coast, sir. The Pacific Aerodyne takeover.
Oh, bugger. Pacific Aerodyne. They're gone. They've had it. Norman Castonmeyer is a fucking dinosaur who doesn't know enough to find a tar pit. Do you know what I found in the corner, George? Do you? Do you know what I found in the corner of my $1,600? Oh my God. $1,600 a month penthouse apartment? Do you?
No, sir.
I found a roach. That's right, a cockroach. This is the third time, George, and I won't have it.
I called to tell you that the Pratt Corporation now owns a majority of Pacific Aerodyne stock.
Of course we do. You know what's going. You know what's going to happen if we don't go in. How many times have I told you that, George? I'm going to have to hang up. Keep the line open for the Super. I'm not going to have bugs into my building. I loathe bugs.
Yes, sir. I know you do.
Pratt looks around his lovely apartment, and there is a harried, phobic expression on his face for a moment.
Loathe them.
Pause.
Mr. Pratt, sir.
What, for Christ's sake?
Norman Castonmeyer shot himself an hour ago, sir, when it became clear that there was no way to stop the takeover. He shot himself through the right eye. He's dead.
There's silence for a moment. Then suddenly, and perhaps shockingly, Pratt bursts into delighted cackles of laughter.
Wonderful. Now we won't have to offer the old mensch a chair on the board of directors. Sweet.
But the scandal.
Oh, the scandal, my cracked ass. You mean the stink, George, the smell. Business always smells, George. And the bigger the business, the bigger the smell. A really big deal stinks like a dead tuna 3 days in the sun. We can bear up under the smell.
Yes, sir, but...
Send his widow flowers, George, and my name if you like. Now get off the phone. The super only has 24 minutes left.
Yes, sir.
Once you get bugs, you never get rid of them, George. They breed in the crawl spaces, the conduits, the very core of the building. Goodbye, George.
Good night, Mr. Pratt.
Pratt slams the phone down. He stands for a moment, then pulls open one drawer in his desk. From it, he takes a matchbox. He dumps out the matches. He takes the empty box and goes to the fireplace. From the rack of tools, he takes a small ornamental shovel and goes back over to the corner where we originally saw him. In the corner, lying dead on the corner on its armored little back, is a good-sized cockroach. The little ornamental shovel comes good into frame and scoops up the roach. On Pratt, working carefully, he tilts up the small shovel. The body of the cockroach falls into the matchbox. We see it there quite clearly before he slides the box closed. On Pratt's face is an expression of loathing and horror. Pratt speaks to the dead roach.
You and your kind are not going to take over my building.
He stands and returns the shovel to the rack of fire tools, then takes the matchbook over to the desk. He speaks as he does these things. By now we'll hopefully see him as something of an eccentric, so this speaking aloud doesn't seem odd or contrived.
Castonmeyer shot himself. Good riddance. Good fucking riddance. Just another roach. Just another bug.
He looks at the matchbox with loathing. The phone rings. Pratt snatches it up.
Hello, talk to me.
It's Carl Reynolds, sir. I'm calling from Orlando.
Where?
Orlando, Florida, Mr. Pratt. The wife and I decided to take the kids to Disney World this year.
Fuck your kids. Do you know what I found up here? A cockroach. It's the third time something like this has happened, Reynolds. First, a spider, a big one, and then some kind of beetle, and now a fucking cockroach. Do your job, Reynolds.
Sir, I've spoken to Mr. White, who's on the desk tonight, and...
Do you like your job?
Yes, sir.
Now, I'm glad to hear that, because I want to see White, and not longer than a half an hour after I see White, I want to see the exterminators. Do you understand me?
Mr. Pratt, it's almost 9:45.
And if I don't see those things, you will have no job tonight, by midnight tonight. Do you understand? And next year, you can take your wife and kids to Disney World on your fucking welfare check. Do you understand me, Reynolds? Do you follow? Are we together on this?
A long, long pause. When Reynolds speaks again, there is hate in his voice, held carefully in check.
Yes, sir.
Interior in the kitchen. It's a room with all the amenities: Cuisinart, trash masher, lots of Formica and chrome, all of it astringently clean. It's dimly lit by a single lamp in the breakfast nook.
Good. I trust we are.
Sound as he slams the phone down. The camera begins to move leisurely across the room towards the sink.
Bugs. All of them. Bugs. But you have to watch them. That's why you'll never buy any more than a jumped bellhop, George. You don't understand that. You have to watch them because they creep up on you.
We hear sounds from the living room. Footsteps, a cabinet door being opened, a clinking sound as the neck of a bottle touches the rim of a glass. Pratt is cutting himself off a piece of Mr. Jack Daniel's finest. The camera has reached the sink. It looks in. For a moment, we only see a spotless facing and dark drain hole. Then a bug comes out of the drain. It looks like the cockroach, but it's much bigger and even uglier, if that's possible. Its carapace is greenish. It begins to trundle towards the side of the sink. A second bug comes out of the drain. Then a pair. Then a whole stream of them. Interior living room. Pratt stands at his big picture window, looking morosely out at New York, a drink in his hand. The doorbell rings. Pratt turns and strides across to the door, looks through the loophole. Interior, White, seen through the loophole. White is a black man, the assistant super, dressed in a good suit, blue, dark red tie. Pratt opens the door. Good evening, Mr. Pratt.
About damn time.
White steps in. Got bugs again, huh, Mr. Pratt?
Look at this. I want you to look at this.
White follows Pratt back to the desk. Pratt picks up the matchbox and hands it to White.
Look at that.
White opens the matchbox and looks for a long time. Then he closes it and hands it back. An empty matchbox, Mr. Pratt?
What?
He opens the box and looks in. Interior of the matchbox, it's empty. In the living room, Pratt is absolutely furious.
It got out. It got out somehow. I got to get it with my bug spray. Right over there in that corner. Put it in there with a fire shovel. Must have only stunned it.
Yes, sir. There's a slight pause here. Pratt looks at White. Pratt's face is twisted and ugly.
Why are you looking at me that way?
In point of fact, White's face is utterly expressionless. What way, Mr. Pratt?
Like I was crazy.
Pardon me, Mr. Pratt, sir. I don't think you're crazy. Not at all. I was just trying to run down in my mind who has the 24-hour service, fumigating services, that is. I believe that I could get Pirelli Brothers out here by, shall we say 11:30? Pratt looks at him keenly and for a long time. Then he nods slowly.
You might go far, White. I found that people like you often do in service. That will be fine.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt, sir. I'll call them now.
See that you do.
White goes back to the door and opens it.
White?
Yes, sir, Mr. Pratt, sir.
It must have only been stunned. It got out of the box somehow. Roaches are very quick. I know because we had them in the place where I lived as a boy. Roaches, bedbugs, silverfish, bugs, rats, too. They're quick. They can creep up on you. Little fuck sticks.
Yes, sir, Mr. Pratt. He waits, but there's no more. Pratt is turned away, muttering, looking for the escaped roach. White lets himself out, pulling the door closed behind him.
They creep up if you let them.
He seizes the can of bug spray again and continues his hunt. In the building elevator, the door opens and White gets in. Now he looks angry, furious. He doesn't so much push the lobby button as he slams it. The doors start to close. I know who's got bugs. You got bugs, you honky asshole. In the sink in Pratt's apartment, the drain is now vomiting an army of bugs. They are a living carpet at the bottom of the sink. Two wings have been spread out along the Formica counters. I want to emphasize that they aren't roaches or crabs or any form of recognizable bug. They are only themselves, and they are repulsive. From the other room, we hear the hiss of the bug spray and Pratt muttering. In the living room, Pratt is walking along, bent over in the line of a baseboarder heater, spraying the shit stuff inside. The telephone rings. He walks over and snatches it up.
Reynolds, White, hello, talk to me.
I just called to tell you what a monster you are, Mr. Pratt, and how I will rejoice when you are finally dead.
Long pause. Pratt actually seems to brighten a bit at the sound of the weepy, oh-so-serious voice. It's a diversion.
Who is this?
I'm the wife of the man you murdered this afternoon.
Pratt actually smiles at this, bearing yellowed dentures.
Mrs. Castonmeyer, how are you?
I hope they keep hell hot for you, you bastard. It wasn't enough for you to drive him to his knees with your bribes and your shortcuts and your pet congressman, was it? You had to kill him as well, you monster, you demon.
Damn, it's good to hear from you.
He came home and his eyes were so dead. And I asked him what was wrong. What could be so bad to make his eyes look that way? And he said just one word before he went into his study. And 10 minutes later, I heard the shot. It was your name, he said.
Yes, I heard from George Gendron that he went out with a bang.
Mrs. Castonmeyer is beaten. She's weeping so hard now, we can barely understand her.
How many men have you destroyed? How many have you killed, you monster?
Only the stupid ones, Mrs. Castonmeyer. The ones who handed me a knife and then stretched out their throats. The ones who overspent. The ones that undercapitalized. The ones that you should pardon the term fucked up. And now, if you'll excuse me.
Interior, the baseboard heater in the living room. Now the bugs are coming out of the heater in droves, over and under it. They are marching across the rug, towards Pratt.
I've got a bug problem here, and I'll have to defer your charming conversation to a later time, around 1987, shall we say?
I hope you die soon. I hope you get cancer in the worst place, and that you rot in hell for eternity.
The camera tracks the bugs, and now we can see Pratt's shoes at the far right of the frame. They're getting close.
Oh, by the way, I wonder if you'd tell me who gave you my private number. I'd like to fire him.
It was in my husband's address book, you son of a bitch.
Well, I can't fire him, can I? I fired him earlier today. Can't fire a man twice, can you? Unless you rehire him, and not even of the unions require the rehiring of cheap, cowardly suicides. At least not you.
Mrs. Castonmeyer utters an inarticulate scream and clicks off. Pratt chuckles. The first wave of bugs have nearly reached his shoe. He moves away, unknowing, just in time. In the lobby desk, White is sitting behind a modular desk. Outside, we see the streets and the occasional car passing. To White's right, we see our banks of TV monitors, security stuff. The switchboard buzzes and White answers the phone. This is the desk. May I help?
Mr. White.
Mrs. McCarthy, is it? Top of the evening to you, darling. Seen any leprechauns up there in 1005? The voice of Mrs. McCarthy is elderly and sprightly. There is just a bare lilt of Irish in her voice. White is smiling affectionately. We can see he genuinely likes the old lady.
Oh, you are a charmer, Mr. White. No leprechauns tonight, I'm afraid, but I've got a bit of a problem.
What's the problem?
The shower won't turn off, Mr. White. I think the handles are stuck just a little, but my arthritis is so bad tonight, and
I understand, Mrs. McCarthy, but gee, I don't know. Frank didn't come in tonight, and I'm all by myself.
Oh, I see.
I went up for him.
I beg pardon? It's a bit hard to hear. The shower.
I said I'll come right up, darling.
Now, that's only if you're sure it's all right.
I'll just shoot the bolt for a minute. It'll be fine.
Oh, I am so glad. I've been afraid it might drip through and stain someone's ceiling.
See you in just a minute, my darling.
Oh, you've kissed the Blarney Stone for sure, Mr. White.
He laughs and hangs up, pushes a button. There's a thudding sound from the door. White nods, gets up and crosses to the elevators, gets in, and the door slides shut. Inside Pratt's kitchen, oh my, this is bad news indeed. The sink is now full of squirming, repulsive bugs of many types. Many of them are quite big, and some of them are definitely spiderish. They are all over the floor as well. Some of them are climbing slowly up the fridge and the stove, black moving splotches against the white enamel. Others are crawling under the folding doors that give on to the living room. In Pratt's living room, Pratt is standing at his big window looking out at the night skyline. He's having a drink. His can of bug spray is on the table to his left. The carpet behind him is covered with bugs, all of them moving towards him. The legs of the table on which he has placed his pressure can of Raid, or whatever it is looking almost padded. They are covered with writhing, advancing bugs.
See, Mrs. Castonmeyer, I grew up in the projects, in the tenements. I know a bug when I see one, and what you do with the bug is you spray it or squash it.
Camera moves up. Above Pratt on the rod which supports the drapes, several of the big furry spider things are crawling sluggishly. In the bathroom, sound of a shower drumming away. Two brown hands enter the frame, grasp the faucet, and twist them. The drumming sound of the shower dies away as it drips. The camera draws back to show us White and Mrs. McCarthy. She's small, white-haired, green-eyed, and smiling.
Oh, thank you, Mr. White. You are a dear man.
So my mother always said, Mrs. McCarthy. Just you and her, however.
Could I offer you a cup of tea? A piece of my apple bread? Just made fresh today.
If you want to plan to be up for another hour, keep it warm for me. Luke's coming in on to pull door duty, and I'll be freed up.
That's a deal.
In the 10th floor hall, White is outside. I'll see you, beautiful.
Oh, you've kissed the stone for certain sure.
He laughs as he closes the door and starts out into the hall. In Pratt's living room, he is still looking out at the skyline, but his drink is mostly gone. Behind him, the living room is nauseating sea of bugs, creepy crawlies of every possible description. There are no bigger than the moon on your thumbnail. Some are damn near as big as rats. They're silent, though. Silent. They're creeping up on him. Pratt toasts the glowing New York skyline.
Here's to you, Mr. and Mrs. Castonmeyer, and all the Mr. and Mrs. Castonmeyers of the world. May you continue to get buggered in perpetuity, and may you never rise up. Salud.
He begins to drink and then stops abruptly.
What the fuck?
The lights of Manhattan are going out in large blocks. The Lower West Side, the Upper West Side, Midtown. It's a blackout, and it's marching straight towards Pratt's building.
Oh, for Christ's sake!
In the building elevator, White is in the elevator by himself, whistling a little, thinking of that warm apple bread, maybe. Suddenly, the lights go out and the elevator comes to a halt. What the? He tries a couple of switches. Nothing. One emergency light comes on, but no power. He thumbs the intercom switch. Hello? Hello, anybody? I'm stuck in the damn elevator. In the building lobby, a couple of emergency lights have gone on down here also, but by and large, it's pretty dark. Dark outside, too. From out there comes the sound of auto horns blaring in a confused cacophony. From the intercom comes White's voice. Hello? Somebody, what's going on? The elevator is stuck. In Pratt's kitchen, a jungle of bugs. The surfaces are so furred with them that we can barely make out these things. And all of them are squirming. In Pratt's living room, Pratt is still at the window, drink in hand, marveling at the darkened city.
If it were my electric company, it never would have happened.
He toasts the darkened city, starts to raise his glass to his mouth, and then makes a half-gagging, half-screaming sound of distaste. In Pratt's glass, a bug is floating in the glass. Pretty big one, kicking its legs weakly. In Pratt's living room, he dashes his drink at the window.
Bugs! God damn bugs! This blackout better not keep the damned exterminators from coming!
Pratt turns away from the window. In the eerie gloom, he sees what has happened. He is beyond screaming, at least for this moment. His eyes widen and his jaw drops. A strange gagging, grunting sound is about to escape his throat. In Pratt's living room, from his POV, yeah, it's pretty horrible, all right. Little buggers are everywhere, millions of them, and they are noticeably moving towards Pratt. Interior Pratt, night. One of the spiders, for want of a better word, drops into his hair. Now he begins to scream. He beats at the top of his head madly and finally manages to dislodge it onto his hand. He screams in pain and finally manages to whip it off of his hand. He looks at the hand, unbelieving. It's bleeding. As if on signal, the other spider-like creatures begin to drop from the curtain rod, landing on his head, his neck, his shoulders. In a fear of panic, Pratt runs across the living room towards the door. Bugs begin to inundate his shoes, his pant legs. We hear the sounds of them crunching under his shoes like soggy popcorn. Gross. He veers through his bedroom door, or still beating madly at the spider things on his neck, head, and shoulders. They're biting him. We see blood oozing from the lacerations. He reaches the door, opens it, and bursts through. In Pratt's bedroom, no bugs are here except the ones Pratt brought in on his body. He closes the door and locks it. He's brushing the spider things off of him one by one, still screaming, and stamps them under his feet. We hear the splattering sounds. He dislodges bugs from his shoes, from his cuffs, and stamps them. He's panting with fear and revulsion. He brushes the remaining bugs off and looks around wildly. But the bedroom is, as they say, looking good. When his eyes fix to the door, bugs are trundling under it. We can hear scratching sounds as others go to work on it with their mandibles. Pratt begins to squash a new influx of bugs, but this is a losing proposition. There are too many of them. He looks around, then grabs a throw rug off of the floor. He stuffs it against the small crack at the bottom of the door and then stamps the rest of the bugs. He's gotten the least nominal control of himself again. He stands there for a moment, breathing hard, and then hurries across to the telephone on the bed table. He snatches it up and dials 0. The telephone begins to ring, and ring, and ring.
White, answer your fucking phone, you bastard!
In the lobby, deserted, the camera is looking at the switchboard. Several of the lights are flashing. Pratt is apparently not the only one trying to call down, but there's no answer, White being tucked away somewhere between the 4th and 5th floors. He drops the phone with a snarl and picks it up again. He dials 911.
Hello, please. Sergeant Meggs, state your name and the nature of your problem, please.
This is Upson Pratt. The Upson Pratt. I've got bugs.
Everybody does tonight, man. You mind getting off? We got a blackout happening in case you didn't notice.
No, bugs. Bugs. There are millions of them. They bite.
He breaks off and looks towards the door. That chewing sound is louder. Little pieces of the door are starting to fall off.
They're chewing through the door!
Well, I'll tell you what. Whatever you stopped drinking an hour ago, go have yourself a good shot of it. They'll go away.
No, this is real. Please, for God's sake, man, this is real.
I'm sorry. On a slow night, we could talk about it, man, but I just don't have time to bullshit with you.
I don't think you understand who you're talking to. This is Upson Pratt, you cop, you cheap cop. Upson Pratt, Upson.
A clicking sound, followed by the buzz of an open line. With a shriek, Pratt throws his phone across the room. He throws a terrified glance at the door, where the chewing sounds are growing steadily louder. Now a hole appears, several of them, and the river of bugs begins to crawl down the door. He looks away towards the bed and steps away, his face drawn in terror. In Pratt's bed, it's covered by a quilted satin coverlet powdered blue, embroidered on a darker blue art entwined initials UP. The quilt is moving, rippling. There's a soft, almost slithery sound. With a convulsive moment, he steps forward and rips the coverlet back, begins to scream again. The bed is full of bugs, more millions. They immediately begin to creep towards him. Others come from beneath the bed, still others from the heating vents and through the louvre of the air conditioner. He looks back at the door, which is almost totally destroyed now. The bugs are just coming from that direction. Screaming, Pratt runs from his final place of refuge, the bathroom. He turns on the light, cold white fluorescence, and pulls the door shut. We hear the clicking sound of the turning lock. The bedroom now belongs to the bugs. In the bathroom medicine cabinet, we see Pratt's terrorized, sweaty face in the medicine cabinet mirror, but he's reaching for what's on top. Lined up neatly like soldiers are a half a dozen spray cans of Black Flag bug spray. He takes one of them. The camera moves back to take in Pratt. He fumbles the cap off of the bug canister and turns to face the door, lips pulling back into a snarl. Outside, we can hear the sound of the bugs attacking the bedroom door.
Come on and try it. Just try it. Just.
Something occurs to him, and he suddenly turns back to the medicine cabinet. He opens it, and a black flood of squirming bugs come out. Some run up his arms. Screaming, he staggers away. Looks down into the toilet. No relief there. The toilet is also full of them. They're climbing inexorably up the porcelain, over the drowned bodies of their comrades. Pratt is trying to get the bugs off of his arms. He's also looking up to the door with terror. The door is giving way before the crunching, munching assault of these bugs. Now he looks at the tub. The shower curtain is drawn. Pratt rakes it back, and there is the final horror. The tub is full to the rim, with a squirming multitude of great big bugs. Pratt begins to shriek and shoot the spray at them wildly. In the elevator, White is standing on the floor. He looks around disgustedly. Blackout, must be. Hope you're enjoying yourself, Mr. Pratt. In Pratt's bedroom, Pratt is covered with bugs. They're on his clothes, his hands, his arms, his face. He opens his mouth to scream, and bugs run busily into his mouth. He begins to gag and spit. He drops his can of bug spray and begins to run madly around the small space of the bathroom, completely bullshit, clawing at his face. In the building lobby, through the glass doors, we see a panel truck pull up. Written on the side is Pinelli Brothers, and below, 24-hour extermination services. Two men, dressed in white coveralls, get out and run toward the glass double doors, each carrying a large case. They try the doors. They are locked. Of course, White threw the bolt when he went out to check on Mrs. McCarthy's shower. They tug the doors and holler for a bit. All no good, of course.
Well, what the hell do we do now?
You do whatever you want. I'm going home.
We won't get 4 blocks with all the traffic lights out.
So let's go over to Old Looney's and get shit-faced.
The first man brightens at that prospect.
Match for beers?
Oh, fuck that. Match you for pictures.
Hey, sold. You didn't really want to see your old lady tonight, do you?
Nah, she drives me bugs.
They look at each other for a moment, then burst out laughing. They stroll off together, leaving the truck at the curb. In Pratt's bedroom, no bugs here. Not a sign of a bug. In Pratt's kitchen, ditto. Not a bug to be seen. The camera moves around and shows that everything, including the sink drain, is in apple pie order. In Pratt's bathroom, no bugs either. The shower curtain is raked back, showing us the tub, gleaming and spotless. The door is shut and whole. Pratt is sitting on the floor, his head tilted back, his eyes glazed. Dead. The expression stamped on his face is one of unutterable horror. Beside one stiffening hand is a a spray can of the Black Flag bug spray. The camera moves in on Pratt's face. Closer and closer. Now Pratt's face fills the screen, and a cockroach trundles out of one of his nostrils. Freeze frame. The freeze frame becomes a comic picture which shows Upton Pratt's dead face and a cockroach halfway between the nostrils and his upper lip. Now below this frame, which will take up half the page, you read, well, that's our last yell yarn for this time, kiddies. And until Creepshow returns in your town, all we can say is pleasant dreams. Sounds come in, not from those of the rain, wind, or thunder. The storm is over. Now, we hear birds and whining, revving roar of an engine, plus the whine of a big dump truck piston mashing trash. The light is different too as it falls. Sorry, I lost my. As it falls on the Creepshow comic book, it is dawn light now. The wind flutters its final page a bit, then flips over. Now in the light is an ad for monster masks. On the right, the inside ad of the back cover is one of the standard ads: greeting cards, Daisy air rifles, Cloverline brand salve. Take your pick. Would one of these companies give permission? Probably. If not, we could whip something up. The important thing about this third cover is a rectangle of it is gone down to the lower right. It's been neatly snipped out. All of this time, the sound of an approaching dump truck is beginning closer and louder. We can also hear the clang of garbage cans, the garbage men shouting back and forth at each other, those bellowing monosyllables that apparently form a sublanguage to trash collectors. Ho and eop and bah and yeah and whatever. The wind flutters on the final page, and the Creepshow mag is now closed, cover down, back up on the edge of the curb. The back page is a full-page, full-color ad featuring a hideous squat doll, chocolate brown in color. It is headed by the inevitable, "Hey kids!" It's an ad for a voodoo doll. The copy informs the kid for only $4.99, send check for mail or money, or no CODs, please. He or she can have a genuine Haitian voodoo doll. Get even with a local bully. Make the prettiest girl in school fall in love with you. Make the captain of the opposing team in this week's football game fall under a bus before the match. All you need to do is obtain a lock of the victim's hair or a fingernail and a bit of clothing. Also, blah, 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 blah. But all we really need is to get the idea and see the coupon has been clipped. On Maple Street, the municipal dump truck is approaching the suburban ranch house, which we recognize it belongs to Stan, the comic book hater, his wife, and Billy, whose comic book ended up in the trash at the beginning of the movie. One trash guy is driving the truck. Two others, first trash man and second trash man, are lifting cans and dumping them, then riding on the back of the lumbering truck to the next house. They reach Stan's house.
Oh, up.
Truck stops, and they get Stan's garbage. Yes, sir, 3 cans full, and dump it into the truck's maw. Throw the cans back into the curb with a customary trash man arrogance.
Right on!
Whining, a howling sound of the mashing piston getting to work. The trash is gradually pushed back into the darkness.
God!
The truck starts down the street again. The second trash man spots the Creepshow comic lying on the edge of the curb.
You get that?
You get it.
First trash man hops off of the truck, pulls over, and grabs the comic book. Grins at the hideous voodoo doll in the back, turns it over, and looks at the cover. He unfolds the magazine, stuffs it in the back pocket of his coverall, and runs back to the truck. Hops in on the step.
What'd you get?
First trash man takes it out and shows him.
Comic book. My kids love them.
They've approached a fresh cache of garbage cans.
Oh, up.
The truck stops. They get off and run through the trash can, or run towards the trash cans. We see half of the Creepshow logo flapping in the first trash man's pocket. In the breakfast nook, Stan and his wife Maxine are sitting in the breakfast nook table in the kitchen that's just long enough for 3. The two of them are trying to face each other. At the end, a place has been set, a bowl of dry cereal, milk, and juice. Billy's place. Stan looks terrible. He is dressed in gray fatigues of a working man. His face is heavily lined. He's not eating. He's constantly rubbing his neck.
Where's Billy?
He'll be down in a minute. I know he's up. Stan, are you okay?
Didn't sleep much last night.
Storm?
No. This goddamn stiff neck. I can barely turn my head.
You must have strained it.
Yeah, I guess. I don't... Ow!
He clasps his left hand to his neck, grimacing horribly.
Oh, you poor old bear. Want me to get the Bengay?
No!
She recoils. Stan sits there, rubbing his neck. Interior, Billy's bedroom upstairs, morning. Billy sits at his chair at the desk in a slanting bar of morning sun. He's dressed for school, and there's a neat pile of school books on his desk. In one hand, he's holding a voodoo doll from the back of the Creepshow magazine. Its head, bald in the advertisement, has been topped with a tuft of black hair that looks very much like his father's hair. The hair has been scotch taped on. The doll is dressed in gray cloth that also should look familiar. In his other hand, Billy holds a long hat pin.
Teach you to throw away my comic books.
He jams the hat pin viciously into the doll's neck. In the kitchen nook, Stan clasps his hand to his neck again, and the camera moves in on the close-up. We see a small patch of gray cloth has been scissored from the cuff of his shirt. In Billy's bedroom upstairs.
Ready for another shot, Dad?
He plunges the pin into the neck of the doll. From downstairs, we hear Stan cry out in pain. Freeze frame. Here we see a full color picture of Billy with his voodoo doll. The camera pulls back and we see this is the cover of Creepshow's second issue. The camera pulls back further and we see it's on a newsstand flanked by other current horror comics. Run final credits over this. Fade out.